Excellencies, distinguished delegates, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us in this room. And welcome to the expert group meeting on strengthening resilient and sustainable urban development in Asia and the Pacific. Please find your seat and we will be starting shortly. And I'm Rebecca Purba with the Sustainable Urban Development section of ESCAP, and I'll be your MC today. To start us off, may I welcome our opening and welcome speakers, starting with Deputy Executive Secretary of ESCAP for Partnership and Coordination, Mr. Shambi Sharp, followed by His Excellency, Mr. Sanoy Boizada, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Tajikistan, as well as Ms. Inkar Abzali, Head of the Division of Multilateral Cooperation and Investments, Department of International Cooperation, Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources, Kazakhstan. I welcome the opening speakers to the head table.
Okay, I was waiting for further instruction, but thank you. Dear colleagues, excellencies, distinguished delegates, friends, it's a great honor on behalf of ESCAP and on behalf of all of the ESCAP colleagues here in the room to welcome all of you here today for this very important conversation, this very important discussion here in Bangkok, and it's really wonderful to see such a diverse array of countries, of communities represented here. We have as well. I wish to appreciate presence of Ambassador Edersinghe as well from Sri Lanka, and we may have some other VIPs in the room. Apologies if I'm missing anybody. But really a special pleasure to welcome here at the speakers table two very distinguished colleagues, His Excellency Mr. Sanoy Boizada, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Tajikistan. Welcome, sir. Thank you for being with us. And Ms. Inkar Abzali, Head of the Division of Multilateral Cooperation and Investments, Department of International Cooperation in the Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources of Kazakhstan. And just to say, I actually was just very recently in Almaty and Astana, so it was very nice to refresh my understanding of what's happening in Kazakhstan, more broadly speaking. It was the Eurasian Economic Forum as well. And Tajikistan, Dushanbe, it's been a while, but we've agreed that I'll be coming quite soon. Looking forward as well, very much. So I think that this is a very important, let's say, platform, the expert group meeting on strengthening resilient and sustainable urban development in Asia and the Pacific, coming alongside, of course, associated with the 9th session of the Committee on Environment and Development. I think that it's vitally important. That's why this is such an important convening, because we're able to kind of bring together so many different perspectives, so many different conversations and ways to move forward, to share experiences. This is multilateralism really at its core. And as we know, the cities of Asia and Pacific, the cities and towns and communities and villages are really where so much of our region's future is being written. And as we know, what is so very exciting to be a part of this conversation is that it is Asian Pacific. This is the most dynamic, the most diverse, the most rapidly urbanizing region in the world. And when we look at the great cities of the region now today, it's amazing to think that this is only a certain percentage of the built environment that this region will be home to in the decades ahead. So if we get things right now, this is going to change really the course, not just of the region, but of the world, really. So more than anywhere else, the impacts of climate change, of course, as we know, are being felt. Extreme heat, air pollution, land subsidence, coastal erosion, water scarcity, and alongside these slow, grinding pressures come sudden shocks that are not anticipated: cyclones, floods, storm surges, landslides, and climate change is, of course, making these more frequent and more severe when they do impact. And a single extreme event can, in a matter of hours, disrupt housing, roads, drainage, water supply, really destroy progress that has taken years and years to build, not to mention lives as well. These are cascading dynamics. So as these challenges become more complex and interconnected, cities need to anticipate this change, need to adapt to uncertainty and make decisions today that strengthen the resilience for the long term and safeguard the developments, the development gains. So the resilience of our cities will determine the degree to which we advance inclusive growth and deliver on the promise of SDGs, more broadly speaking, to 2030 and beyond for future generations. We know from ESCAP analysis, from the colleagues here in the room, that progress towards the SDGs, well, across the board, very much are off track. Goal 11 in particular, sustainable cities and communities, very much off track. And in fact, unfortunately, there's a regression from 2015, a regression in the last decade plus in terms of measuring local impacts of disasters, deaths, economic losses, and the such. So, you know, this is not theoretical, and as you know it, I'm preaching to the choir, so to speak, this is everyday reality that is at the forefront of a decision maker, policy makers' decision matrix. So, but we're very, you know, it's not all bad news, there's very good news, right? And we're genuinely encouraged because across the region, we see governments increasingly recognizing and internalizing the simple truth that resilience is not a luxury, it's an absolute necessity for long-term development. How we plan cities, how we govern cities, how we invest in cities as well. And as well, not just governments, but of course, all of society. This is the very important message that we've been seeing here in these few days coming together, that it's all of society, it's governments, it's academics, it's civil society, it's communities, actions, citizen actions, it's the private sector, all coming together. So precisely, this is why member states at the 81st session of the Commission, the previous Commission, adopted Resolution 81/2 on regional cooperation for resilient and sustainable urban development. And I think that, you know, those outside the UN system can be forgiven for sometimes thinking it sounds rather dry. Resolution, you know, 81/2, I mean, and we constantly reminded, this is not about pieces of paper, this is not about complicated titles, but this is about real action that is saving lives, that is driving prosperity and a future for our children. At the bottom line, that's what this is all about. So discussions today, I will conclude because the most interesting part is certainly not listening to me. The discussions today really are helping to contribute to this effort and really will drive future decision-making and future investments, including development of the Regional Urban Resilience Guidance and preparations for the 9th Asia-Pacific Urban Forum to be held in Yokohama in August 2027. And I'm not sure if we have somebody from Yokohama here. Oh, yes, wonderful. No, I've had the great privilege to meet, of course, with the mayor some time ago, and really very, very excited about that. And thanks to the city of Yokohama for the leadership also in that. And I think, of course, a city that knows how to how to deal with disaster risk in a very, very effective way. So let me conclude there. Looking forward to a productive discussion, and simply on behalf of my colleagues, recommitting ESCAP to being a partner of choice for you in this journey to the world, the future that we want and that we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shambi Sharp. I now welcome His Excellency, Mr. Sanoy Boeza, for your remark.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, dear participants. At the outset, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to you, ESCAP, for convening this timely expert group meeting on strengthening resilient and sustainable urban development in Asia and the Pacific. Urbanization is one of the defining global trends of our time. Today, more than half of the world's population lives in urban areas, and by 2050, this figure is expected to approach 70%. Asia and the Pacific will continue to experience one of the fastest rates of urban growth, making resilient and sustainable urban development indispensable for achieving both the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the new urban agenda. At the same time, cities across our region are increasingly exposed to the impacts of climate change, including floods, droughts, extreme heat, landslides, and environmental degradation. These interconnected challenges call for integrated planning, resilient infrastructure, and stronger cooperation at all levels. For mountain countries such as Tajikistan, urban resilience is closely linked to the accelerating impacts of climate change. The rapid retreat of glaciers and changing hydrological patterns are increasing the frequency and intensity of floods, mudflows, and other climate-related hazards, while affecting water availability and the resilience of both urban and rural communities. These trends reinforce the importance of integrated planning, stronger preparedness, and investments in a resilient infrastructure. Tajikistan has consistently promoted international cooperation on water and climate through the United Nations. We remain committed to advancing the objectives of the International Decade for Action, Water for Sustainable Development 2018-2028, the International Year of Glaciers Preservation 2025, and the Decade of Action for Cryospheric Sciences 2025-2034. These initiatives contribute to strengthening scientific cooperation, knowledge exchange, and practical action and responding to the growing impacts of climate change. In our view, resilient urban development requires integrated approaches that connect housing, water and sanitation, transport, environmental protection, disaster risk reduction, and climate adaptation. Equally important is recognizing the strong interdependence between urban and rural areas, which are connected through ecosystems, infrastructure, and the sustainable management of natural resources. In this regard, the fourth high-level international conference on the International Decade for Action, Water for Sustainable Development, held in Dushanbe in May this year, brought together around 2,500 participants from 110 UN member states, 75 international and regional organizations, and 170 NGOs and academic institutions. The conference reaffirmed the importance of implementation-oriented partnerships and integrated approaches across the rural-urban continuum. In partnership with the UN Habitat and the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation, Tajikistan also co-organized the high-level forum on transformative partnerships and strategies across the rural-urban continuum, multi-stakeholder contribution to the roadmap from Dakar and Abu Dhabi. The forum brought together governments, local authorities, United Nations entities, development partners, academia and civil society to identify practical solutions for strengthening resilient and sustainable urban development through integrated approaches and enhanced partnerships. We also believe that the outcomes of the 13th session of the World Urban Forum held in Baku in May this year under the theme Housing the World, Safe and Resilient Cities and Communities, together with the outcomes of the Dushanbe Forum, provide a valuable contribution to accelerating implementation of the new urban agenda through practical action, investment, innovation, and stronger partnerships. Looking ahead, we welcome the upcoming high-level meeting of the United Nations General Assembly on the midterm review of the new urban agenda, to be held in New York on the 16th, 17th July 2026, as an important opportunity to assess progress achieved since the adoption of the new urban agenda and to accelerate collective action towards inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable cities and communities. We also welcome the 2026 high-level political forum on sustainable development convened under the theme transformative, equitable, innovative, and coordinated actions for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its SDGs for a sustainable future for all. We particularly note that this year's forum will undertake in-depth reviews of SDGs 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17. The review of SDG 6 and SDG 11 provides a timely opportunity to strengthen the linkages between water, sustainable urban development, resilient infrastructure, and partnerships, while accelerating integrated implementation of the 2030 Agenda. Looking ahead, we believe that ESCAP has an important role to play in strengthening regional cooperation through knowledge exchange, peer learning, capacity building, and technical cooperation. Expanding access to innovative technologies, data, financing, and practical planning tools will be essential to support resilient urban development across our region. Tajikistan remains committed to working closely with the ESCAP, UN Habitat, and all partners to advance resilient, inclusive, and sustainable cities and communities throughout Asia and the Pacific. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now welcome Ms. Inkar Abzali from Kazakhstan for her opening remarks.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, partners, and participants, first of all, on behalf of the Ministry of Ecology and Natural Resources, Republic of Kazakhstan, I want to welcome you, all participants, in this big event and express my appreciation to the ESCAP for organize this event. So, as you know, Asia-Pacific region remains one of the world's most vulnerable regions to land degradation, water scarcity, environmental pollution, and biodiversity loss. These challenges already have a direct impact on food security, public health, and sustainable economic development across our countries. For Central Asia, especially for Kazakhstan, the sustainable management of water resources, restoration of degraded ecosystems, and the conservation of natural capital are particularly important as environmental challenges don't recognize national borders and therefore require collective solution. So Kazakhstan considers the environmental agenda an integral part of our national policy and regional cooperation. Now, 1 minute, please. I have technical issues. I wanted to say that on July 1st in this year, we have an important environmental policy. I want to say that yesterday was reached in Kazakhstan environmental policy with the entire interforce of constitutional amendments that elevate environmental protection to a fundamentally new level. For the first time in our country, in our country's history, the Constitution explicitly establishes every citizen's responsibility to protect nature and the environment, while also affirming our responsibility to future generations. These provisions reinforce the principles of sustainable use of natural resources and environmental and provide a solid constitutional foundation for building a strong environmental culture in our society. These constitutional principles are reflected in the nationwide environmental initiative, Taza Kazakhstan, launched by President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. The initiative goes beyond environmental cleanup activities. It aims to foster a new environmental culture based on respect for nature, sustainable lifestyles. Since this initiative is launched, more than 5.2 million trees have been planted, over 2 million tons of waste have been collected, 3.4 million hectares of land have been cleaned, and more than 7 million people participate in environmental campaigns across the country. In 2021, a new environmental code of the Republic of Kazakhstan entered into force based on the principle of the polluter pays. The application of best available techniques in the transition towards a circular economy. The code provides for improving the waste management system, introducing expanded producer responsibility, and the reuse of resources. In this regard, Kazakhstan attaches particular importance to developing the waste processing and resource recycling sector. As you know, in April this year, Kazakhstan hosted the Regional Ecological Summit, which became an important platform for addressing key environmental challenges and regional cooperation. The summit's principal political outcomes was the adoption of the Declaration of the Heads of State of Central Asia, Environmental Solidarity of Central Asia, which reflects our shared commitment to water security, the preservation of Caspian Sea, biodiversity, and to promote sustainable and urban. So, Kazakhstan also supports the establishment of an international water organization within the United Nations system. An important institutional outcome of the summit was the signing of a framework agreement on strategic cooperation between the government of the Republic of Kazakhstan and the UNEP. providing for the establishment of a regional environmental hub for Central Asia in Almaty. So, dear colleagues, today's climate challenges require not only adaptation, but also a new level of international cooperation based on solidarity, shared responsibility in sustainable development for our countries. Only by working together with government, international organization, scientific community, and the private sector, we can ensure environmental security, sustainable development, and the well-being of future generations. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for Thank you very much for our opening speakers. Please give one a warm round of applause one more time for our speakers. And I welcome the speakers to move to the reserve seat. I now welcome colleagues from ESCAP, Ms. Sanjeevani Singh and Mr. Daisuke, to present a scene-setting presentation to help us form the discussion.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished guests, partners and colleagues. It is really my honor to be here today among our distinguished guests as well as our expert panelists and be able to set the regional context for you around strengthening urban resilience in our region. So the presentation that I will share today draws on recent evidence from our region, but also the perspectives of our member states and the outcomes of our recent intergovernmental meetings and consultations. And we aim to do three things in this presentation today. The first one is to highlight the evolving nature of urban risks. Secondly, to also highlight the key resilience challenges facing cities across the regions and the priority areas where regional cooperation can really accelerate all of this work. So if we look at our context today, I think what is really clear is that our cities are really operating at a very different or in a very different risk environment than they were even a decade ago. And we've seen that historically, risks have really been dealt with in isolation, and governments tend to plan separately for risks like flooding or cyclones or air pollution or droughts. However, what we're seeing today is that risks are really independent, and they're more interconnected. If we look at chronic stresses and low onset risks, such as extreme heat or the rise of sea level or land subsidence or even ecosystem degradation, we're seeing that these chronic onset risks are increasingly interacting with rapid onset shocks such as cyclones and things like floods and landslides. And we're seeing that together they are creating this compounding and complex environment or risks that are placing increasing pressure on our cities. I mean, for example, if we consider a cyclone or a flood, we all know that it just doesn't damage buildings, that it really disrupts the whole city. It disrupts the transport networks, water and sanitation services, the electrical supply, affects health facilities. And what we're seeing is that these impacts cascade across these interconnected urban systems. And what we're also seeing is that they often affect the most vulnerable communities first and for the longest. And overall, I think what we're seeing, or the key message, is that the risks are interconnected and our responses also need to be interconnected. And I think this was a key message that we've heard over the last few days, and the importance of really advancing synergistic solutions to address these complex challenges. And if we look at the evidence, and I think our DES touched on this as well, but if we look at ESCAP's 2026 Asia Pacific SDG report, we see that 88% of the measurable SDG targets are projected to be missed by 2030. And I think a key statistic that we don't really talk about is that, or don't emphasize enough, is that 700 million people across the region continue to live in slums and slum-like conditions. And I think essentially this highlights the scale of the resilience challenge in terms of building more inclusive, safe, and resilient and sustainable cities. And what is particularly striking, and I think you've heard this several times, is that despite the fact that there is progress in terms of the strengthening and the increasing availability or development of national and local disaster risk reduction strategies and broader policy frameworks, the resilient outcomes are moving in the opposite direction. And we're seeing that despite there being this, growing national policy environment and progress in this area, disaster losses continue to increase. And we're seeing that with increasing damage to critical infrastructure, we're seeing the disruption of essential services and the loss of life. So while we see overall in terms of SDG that there is progress, many of the indicators are stagnant or and also regressing. And essentially this points to a fundamental gap, that the policies are in place, but they're not really consistent or translating into resilient outcomes, especially for our cities and for our communities. So the key question is, why does urban resilience matter now? Why does it matter for our region? And I think it's very, very clear for us. So we have 3.5 billion people that will live in the region by 2050. So that's 60% of the world's population. And I think we've constantly heard that 80% of the GDP in our region is generated in cities. And I think the underlying message is that when our cities become resilient, then also our economies and our communities become more resilient. But there's also a challenge that we're seeing in relation to this growing urbanization, and much of the growth is really taking place in secondary or intermediary cities, and these are really the cities that have the greatest capacity and financial constraints. However, these are the same cities that are being asked to manage increasingly more complex risks with really limited resources and capacity. And essentially, this is why we need to think differently. And I think the key shift is really moving from hazard by hazard responses or planning in silos to more integrated approaches. And we really need to be able to bring together climate adaptation, disaster risk reduction, environmental management, and urban development into a single risk-informed approach. And I think this expert group is also part of, trying to identify what is that approach that will be applicable for this region. So just looking at the role of ESCAP, and I think the DES also mentioned it, that through our Commission Resolution 81/2, member states have given ESCAP a mandate to strengthen urban resilience through regional cooperation. And to take this forward, our work focuses on 4 interconnected areas. So the first one is around strengthening urban risk resilience. So to ensure that, the decisions that we are taking are really informed by better data, monitoring, and foresight. Secondly, we want to continue to support integrated governance by embedding and supporting member states to embed resilience into urban planning, investment, and decision-making. And thirdly is around promoting nature-based solutions and system-based approaches. And really to ensure that, utilizing these systems such as nature-based solutions, we are really able to address multiple challenges and derive multiple benefits to support environmental, social, and economic development. And finally, we also really want to focus on strengthening partnerships, and this is multi-stakeholder partnerships. So with our member states to ensure that, we are supporting access to knowledge, we're providing technical cooperation, and also partnerships to support investment and to scale resilience. So essentially, these are the four pillars that we are utilizing to support member states. And we will hear from the discussions this afternoon in terms of how we can also further enhance and take this work forward. And then we also wanted to share a little bit of some deeper insights in terms of what member states are telling us, and to sort of understand some of the key priorities that were discussed at our last Commission session, the 81st Commission session, around regional cooperation for resilient and sustainable development. And what we did is that we analyzed 80 of the country statements delivered by 41 countries during the Commission session. And we're seeing that really three key messages stand out. The first one is around financing constraints. I think financing constraints was one of the most frequent issues that was highlighted or cited by our member states, and more than half of our countries mentioned this in their country statements. And I think this highlights that resilience is not only a technical challenge, but really a financial challenge, and I think we've heard that again over the last few days. The second highest priority or issue was transport and connectivity, together with policies, regulations, and institutional coordination. So again, I think it was both from the perspective of highlighting the impact of climate change or disasters on our transport and connectivity systems, but also the importance of transport and connectivity to support resilience and sustainable development, and also the importance of governance to support, and multi-level governance to support improved resilience. The third area was around inequality, poverty, and the needs of marginalized groups. And this also ranked high and was the third most referenced issue in the concerns of member states. And I think this reminds us that urban resilience is ultimately about protecting people, particularly those who are most vulnerable. And together, these priorities reinforce that building resilient cities requires integrated action across finance, governance, infrastructure, and social inclusion. I think we missed a slide. Right. Okay, I think we lost a slide, that's okay. So then moving on, just looking across not just our intergovernmental meetings, but also some of the regional consultations that we've had. We had a regional partners forum last year in August, which will also feed into our upcoming Asia Pacific Urban Forum. And we summarized, or we analyzed all these intergovernmental meetings and what governments and key stakeholders across the region are telling us, really focus on four common priorities. The first one is around integrated or risk-informed governance. And cities are saying that they need more integrated risk-informed governance, and essentially that planning can no longer respond to one hazard at a time, but it really needs to manage a multitude of risks, and these risks are interconnected. Secondly, it was around the importance of being able to make better decisions based on access to better information, and the importance of really improving or strengthening urban risk intelligence to support decision-making and better monitoring as well as foresight. And third was about stronger institutions and really the importance of coordination across ministries and different levels of government government, but also across different groups of stakeholders, including academia, communities, and the private sector. And then finally, none of this can happen without finance, and that came very strongly in the Commission session, but also in the Regional Partners Forum. And we're seeing that even if you have the best resilience strategy or the best integrated plan, without finance, it's not going to be able to be implemented at scale. And essentially, these are the 4 emerging priorities that we see as the core building blocks for strengthening urban resilience from our analysis. And we're really looking forward to the discussions in this room and hearing from our member states and expert panelists to understand what their priorities are and what they see as the solutions are to addressing urban resilience. And I'll pause there. Thank you.
And I welcome Mr. Daisuke.
Thank you, Rebecca, for Thank you, Rebecca, for giving me the floor. My name is Daisuke Maruichi. I'm an Economic Affairs Officer from Disaster Risk Reduction section of ESCAP. So today the topic is urban, so I'm going to focus on urban when it comes to DRR and climate change adaptation. So I think Sanji just mentioned several very important keywords. I think one of them was risk-informed, risk assessment, the multi-hazard. So those are the things that we need to keep in mind when we work on DRR. So one way that ESCAP has been doing is that, especially under the fiscal constraints, I think that was at the top of the keyword counting. I think countries basically have very limited fiscal space, so they need to prioritize when it comes to thinking about the interventions when it comes to DRR. So one thing that I think a lot of countries are doing is to really identify the hotspots, which is basically the priorities that they need to keep in mind. So one way we support this initiative is to create risk maps. So we start with hazard. There could be anything that you may, I think you had the slow onset one and rapid one and the compounding one. So because of the urban perspective that we need to take into account this time, I'm just focusing on land subsidence and also heat wave as an example. But also, I think we are interested in what those hazard does to exposure. So those exposure could be, for example, informal settlements. I think your presentation also has some mention of slums, and also population in general. But in different countries, those could be health facilities, critical infrastructure, stuff like that. So it's basically overlaying exercise of having hazard on one hand, but on the other hand, you overlay the exposure and then see where the hotspots are. So this is basically the structure of risk maps. So based on this, I think ESCAP has received generous funding from the government of China under CECP, China ESCAP Cooperation Program, to work on the topic of sinking cities. So it's basically land subsidence, right? So one of the pilot that's currently happening is in Bangladesh. I hope this works. Oh yeah, it's too small. So when we look at the map on the very left, you see all the red dots. So this is a map of Dhaka, and you have all the red dots. This is where the subsidence hotspots, meaning that the land is basically sinking more than 5 millimeters per year. So 5 millimeters is a very common threshold for land subsidence. So when we look at Dhaka, there are several hotspots when it comes to land subsidence. So this is, again, the hazard, right? And then we're interested in what it does to exposure. So in this case, when we look at the informal settlements, it's those red square, I cannot really use this one, red squares in the map. So those are where the informal settlements are, the slums are. So some of the land subsidence, land subsidence is close to informal settlements. That obviously poses risks to people who are living there. But this is where the multi-hazard kicks in. And then on the portal, we can also toggle on flood hazard. And then that's the third picture on the very right hand on the screen. So the blue area is the flood risk area. So now we have the, well, not so nice combination of land subsidence, informal settlements, and then flood. And obviously when the land goes down because of the land subsidence, the flood the risk becomes more serious. And again, there are some informal settlements in the communities within those high flood risk area and land subsidence area. So those obviously poses a serious threat to the urban planning. And so I think the point is that when you start with the assumption that you only have limited physical space to, have some targeted interventions, this kind of map clearly shows that these are the areas. If you're interested in working on land subsidence, and also if you're worried about its effects on the informal settlements, those maps can basically show you where the intervention should be. So that was land subsidence and informal settlements. When it comes to the urban context, I think another big hazard is heat wave or extreme heat. So this is, in this case, this is what we typically do when it comes to climate change adaptation concepts. So we basically have two maps. One is baseline, which is on the left-hand side. So this is a historical, sorry, it's not historical, it's a baseline climate projection from 2026 to 2035. But on the right-hand side, this is the worst-case climate scenario we call SSP5. So this is when the greenhouse gas emission continues to go up at the level that's beyond what we are seeing. So obviously that will lead to a higher extreme temperature. So on this map, when you compare the left-hand side and right-hand side, the red area is expanding. So this is the city of Kathmandu. And also the color of red becomes much darker, which means that they're exposed to higher temperature for a longer period of time. And in a grayscale from white to black, those are where the populations are. The population density from white to black scale, so the darker black color, that's where a population is densely populated. So on the very right-hand side of the map, there's like a white area where no one's living in because this is the airport. So, that's how white means, and the black one is the densely populated area. So based on what we call exposure analysis we did, so in a worst-case climate scenario, 88.7% of total areas in Kathmandu will be exposed to heat wave risk using 35 degrees as a threshold, which is a very common threshold for Kathmandu. While on the baseline scenario, when the greenhouse gas emission doesn't go up that much, that's only 32.4%. So there is a clear difference when it comes to how much the GHG emission goes up, and then that will translate into the heat wave. So that's only the one side of the equation. The other side, obviously, is the exposure. But because it's population, and then as you can see on the right-hand side, the heat wave basically covers the entire Kathmandu. Almost 93.6% of total population in Kathmandu will be exposed to heat wave risk. Again, under the extreme climate change scenario. But in a baseline scenario, meaning when we could sort of mitigate the greenhouse emissions, the exposed population remains 35.7% of the total population. So again, our planning, so we're just focusing on the Kathmandu, but when we do that in a national scale, there's more, the variations within the country. But at least even focusing so much on the urban area of Kathmandu, which is not a very big city, you do see some serious implications when it comes to heat wave. So this presentation is about ESCAP risk and resilience portal, so I have to mention what we do. So those kind of analysis we do, whether that's a hazard data set, an exposure data set, with the permission of the counterpart that we work with, we upload it to ESCAP risk and resilience portal. So this is where, for example, the interface that you choose hazard. You have drought, flood, tropical cyclone, earthquake, tsunami, precipitation, temperature, and then again we're working on heat wave, so we can upload heat wave. If we want land subsidence, we can upload land subsidence. So people can basically just go and then click, and then you can have all the, let's say, heat wave map. Then you can zoom in to a specific country or specific region, a specific city, to see the impact. And then, of course, users can do the same thing on the exposure side, so they can choose population, infrastructure, agriculture production, all those different kinds of exposure is also available. So that's risk and resilience portal. Going forward, so we do this kind of analysis. So those are how we support, for example, voluntary national reviews, some national development plans, this kind of analysis. But at the same time, so those list maps are very common, and I think we get a lot of requests to produce those maps, and we can definitely do that. And then when it comes to hazard and exposure, we have the whole list of hazards. For example, when it comes to Kazakhstan or Tajikistan, it's quite interesting because sand and dust storm become a very big issue. Snow cover is also very big. Glacier ice mass, how the glacier melts, that's also another issue. So those things we can customize and create maps. But also I think for us, I don't think it's very difficult. I don't think it's very, should be exclusive when it comes to creating those maps. So we also do provide a tool and also training so that our national counterparts who has to produce those maps and analysis on a daily basis can actually do that without even our support. So this is basically from my side, and this is the QR code and link to the ESCAP Risk and Resilience portal and all the relevant tools. So if you're interested, I would highly encourage that you access and then see what it looks like and how we could potentially help the kind of work that you need to do. Thank you so much.
So very quickly, I know we're behind time, but just to sort of reiterate what the purpose of this EGM is. Really, what we're wanting to do is to, as I presented, we've done an analysis of what member states are saying through our regional intergovernmental meetings, but we really want to utilize this forum to further validate the priorities and really get a deeper understanding of what the challenges and what the priorities are of member states in relation to urban resilience. We also want to identify good practices from our various member states that we can utilize to share and share the learnings and support peer-to-peer learning. And thirdly, we also want to sort of start to shape our thinking around systems thinking and what integrated resilience approach would look like, and utilizing the discussions here, start to move the conversation forward in terms of what a regional urban resilience strategy would look like and what sort of policy recommendations we should be supporting at a regional level. So essentially, those are the elements. I think this EGM is a very important first step as we start to think about developing or progress towards developing our regional guidance. And we really look forward to hearing from our member states and our experts in the room. And I really wish you a fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sanji and Daisuke. You're welcome to come back to the reserve seat. I now welcome Mr. Kurt Garrigan, the Sustainable Urban Development section of ESCAP, to lead us in the moderation of the first session, which is on risk-informed governance and urban resilience planning. Mr. Kurt Garrigan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, and thank you, Sanji and Daisuke, for setting the scene for the further discussions. This first session will really focus on risk-informed governance and urban resilience planning. And so it's my pleasure to welcome our speakers. And if I can invite them to come up as I introduce them. Ms. Fuzia Khan, the Joint Secretary of the Ministry of Housing and Public Works in Bangladesh. Ms. Javanti Sinanyaki, sorry, I always get that wrong. Director General and Chief Executive Officer of Sustainable Development Council of Sri Lanka. Ms. Kalpana Viswanath, Co-founder and Chief Executive Officer of Safety Pin. And Ms. Rubina Adhikari, Co-founder and Chief Operating Officer of Climate Cubit. I do see that we have an all-women. We do our best here. Each of you will have an opportunity to present, but before we do, I think one of the most striking things that we heard and that we've seen actually in the SDG Progress Report, and I'm going to ask my colleagues if we can actually divert a little bit and go back to the slide that shows the SDG progress. This is probably one of the most striking examples of SDG progress being off track and on track. There are very few indicators in the Asia-Pacific region that are on track. There is one in SDG 11, and it's the national DRR strategies, and my colleague Sanji pointed this out. There are very few indicators that are actually regressing since 2015, and it's striking to see that those are essentially the local impacts. So infrastructure loss, damage, economic loss, damaged infrastructures, and impacts on people, deaths and missing persons. How is it possible that we are on track at the national level for disaster risk reduction strategies, but so off track and actually regressing since 2015 on the impacts on people and local communities? That's, I think, a key question that I'm going to ask each of the panelists to keep in mind and try to address as you give your interventions. And we can go back now to the main slide. And actually, for all of the participants in this EGM, how do you reconcile those two very distinct indicators, especially as it relates to urban resilience? So we'll start with Joint Secretary Khan from the Ministry of Housing and Public Works to talk a little bit about actually some of those national approaches and how you're developing DRR strategies that impact urban development.
Respected Excellencies, distinguished guests, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's my privilege to say some few words about our policies which we have taken for our sustainable urban development in future plan. Bangladesh firmly believes that resilience and sustainable urban development is achieved not only through sound policies and legislation, but also through capable institutions, coordinated governance, technical excellence, and effective implementation. From this viewpoint, our government has taken different policies to overcome the present situation, which we have heard earlier in the discussion. We have different agencies like Rajuk, Rajdhani Unnayan Kortripokho, who made the town plan of the Dhaka metropolitan city, and they adopt some policies which will help our future plan and to resilience these problems. We have CDA, Chittagong Unnayan Kortripokho. They have also do some program. Sorry. Oh, this one? Please help me. This one?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Just ask for the next slide.
You can see that the present situation of our country, flood, cyclone, heatwave, and waterlogging. This is our problem. Now we are thinking, how could we overcome this situation and give a better environmental situation to our countrymen? For this, we have taken, this is Raju, leading metropolitan resilience, who do the main town planner of the country, we can say. They have adopted this type of plan, like a prepared structure plan and detailed area plan, a regulated use under Town Improvement Act 1953, protects flood flow zones and environmental sensitive areas, promotes climate resilient metropolitan planning and transit-oriented development, and supports implementation of Special Planning Act 2026. And this is all ongoing process. And our another agency is National Housing Authority. They are engaged with low-income people's, middle income and low-income people housing facilities, and they have also emphasis on our environment and climate change problems, and they made their plan through these steps, promotes affordable housing, planned residential development, social housing initiatives, climate resilient housing solution for low and middle income people, and strengthens social inclusion. This is their motto. Then our Public Works Department. This department is one of the most important government department in our Public Works Department. It makes all the government infrastructure made in our country, and they planned and they arrange. And so they are going to, their latest program is Green Building Principle. They are trying this, green building facilities, energy efficient design, incorporate disaster resilient engineering, and in compliance with Bangladesh National Building Code. We have made a building code, and now PW is engaging energy efficient technology and schedule rates. And then Chattogram Development Authority, CDA. It's our one of the coastal belt. CDA is very important in our country perspective. So we have some plan, and that is metropolitan planning and land use management, climate resilient infrastructure development, disaster risk reduction and climate adaptation, environmental and flood management, sustainable urban growth and coordination. And finally, this is UDD, Urban Development Directorate. This department made different policies and design to make our livelihood so easy and good. Finally, this is our local agencies. These departments will coordinate each other and make a detailed area plan for our country for future. And this is the development coordinated action across government institution and levels. And this is our future plan. We are now working according to these rules and regulations. And finally, our motto is strong institution, coordinate governance, and effective implementation are the foundation of resilient, inclusive, and sustainable cities in Bangladesh. This is our main objective from our Ministry of Public Works and Housing, and we are doing on this work, and futurely we'll make some good efforts which we can show you in our next program. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Joint Secretary, and thank you also for highlighting multi-level governance and implementation, because I think those are the two key areas to address that gap that I pointed out earlier, and we'll come back hopefully to that in some of the discussion. Ms. Javanti, Director General and CEO of Sustainable Development Council Sri Lanka. You're also working at the national level, and you're engaged in both implementation of SDGs as well as monitoring progress against the SDGs. So maybe you may have particular insight on some of those key indicators. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kurt. Good afternoon, everybody. We are all practitioners of, let me see. We are practitioners of policy, so I wanted to tell you that we all have our own experiences, exposures, and also our own approaches. Here today, I'll take a few minutes to tell you about our approach, the Sri Lanka story, the Sri Lanka experience in integrating climate resilience, sustainable development, and national and local planning into ensuring the SDG implementation. I'll first try and take you through the national process that we have in our country to integrate sustainable development and climate resilience into national planning. We have our national policy framework, a thriving nation, a beautiful life framework of the government, which sets the basis for all the government activities. And then we have the national physical plan spanning through 2048. Both these feed into the public investment program of the country, which is drafted, prepared by the National Planning Department of the country. To the same thing, the UN Sustainable Development Country Framework feeds into with the development assistance work. So the approved public investment program, PIP projects, then gets fed into the national action plans of ministries and departments. These ministries ministries and departments, all the institutions take particular care to ensure the incorporation of SDGs, climate resilience, and disaster risk reduction concerns into the action plans in terms of the available policies, strategies, and guidelines that have been provided to them. And then these annual action plans are discussed with the National Budget Department, where the budgetary allocations are identified. In this process, the Sustainable Development Council of Sri Lanka intervenes and prepares the SDG budget coding and tagging, where we tag each and every project with identified targets of SDGs. After the annual budget allocations are decided upon, these projects get implemented, and we also have a specific department in the Treasury, Department of Project Monitoring and Management, which ensures that these projects are implemented and does the oversight. Now from that, I'll take you to two examples, real-world examples. This is the first one from a regional area, Ratnapura. It is a small city close to the hill country of Sri Lanka, which is located in a river basin, in a major river basin, which is why this flooding takes place almost twice a year. These two pictures were taken in 2017 and 2020 after the devastating floods. And this prompted the authorities to come up with a coordinated, integrated plan for the development of this city to prevent or contain flooding. So you see the approach we had. It's an integrated whole of government, whole of society approach. Again, you see the agency involvement ranging from the government to UN development agencies to civil society organizations and even to religious leaders. We had a planning committee appointed with co-chaired by the Urban Development Authority and also the local government authority. All the other agencies were members in this planning committee. They were tasked with referring to and studying all available knowledge products. I have listed a few here and come up with a concrete plan to contain floods. And this is what they came up with. If you see down below at the river basin, you see the old town of Ratnapur. What they did was they identified a suitable land area which is above the level of the old town, which can retain water, the flood water. And this was called as the water retention lake. And they also identified another area above, again above the level of the retention lake as the new town, where they decided to relocate some components of the old town. Now this relocation is taking place. It is scheduled to end in 2030, but some major complexes of the government, such as the district secretariat and the urban council building, have been relocated in the new town, plus around 49,000 people being resettled, plus some of the key economic activities of the old town is now being conducted in the new town area as well. So this is a good example that I wanted to share from Sri Lanka, from regional Sri Lanka, of synergizing SDGs. Here the particular examples are SDGs 11, 13, and 8. So from there, I'll quickly take you to a national level example. This is my last example, Colombo. Colombo is the world's first Ramsar wetland city. Now, what was the reason to come up with the Metro Colombo Wetland Complex, as we call it today? Colombo also was getting inundated with devastating floods starting from 2010 and around. So this problem prompted the authorities to think about some solution, and they came up with the Metro Colombo Urban Development Plan, assisted by the World Bank and also supported by certain other UN agencies, including the UNDP, the GEF Small Grants Program, and the International Water Management Institution, as well as the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Here also you see a broad array of agencies, ranging again from the government, UN development partners, development agencies, civil societies, youth groups, and very importantly, local communities. This is a very good example, again, from Sri Lanka, where the local communities got involved, not just in the inception, but throughout implementation, right till the end, even post-implementation level, because the local communities even now have community monitoring and cleanup projects associated with this one. So the Metro Colombo Wetland Complex, we came up with this to address the flood situation, but it left us with multiple benefits. Of course, the thermal cooling of the area. Recreational area, there are recreational areas constructed associated with this. Residents get involved in it and they get involved in recreational activities, and most importantly, they understand the value of maintaining this and conserving this, and also contributes to urban well-being, climate resilience as well. This is a good example of our whole of society, whole of government approach, again, synergizing SDGs 11, 13, 15, and 17. With that, lastly, I'll come to the persisting issues. We've had key lessons, I think, common to everybody, and the enabling conditions that we think are required. The first one is common to everybody, all of us, I think. We have too many policies and too little action. And then we need to have strengthen the cross-sectoral engagements and coordination, not just strengthening those. We need to ensure that those continue till the very end of implementation. And we have difficulties in finding finances, so we need to come up with innovative financing mechanisms. We also have difficulties in having reliable data to support evidence-based decision-making. So data is also very important. And lastly, but not least, we need to keep up pace with the emerging technologies to improve our planning, implementation, and monitoring. And that's about it from Sri Lanka. That's a very small snapshot of our practices. I hope you gained something. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. A small snapshot, but an important one, because you also mentioned the co-design of policies and projects and initiatives. So it's not as if the national government is doing something and then asking others to implement. You're engaging the communities from the start. And so I think that leads in very well to Kalpana's intervention, where you'll talk also about the engagement of communities, but also vulnerable populations, women and girls, and how to actually leverage that expertise in the development of policies.
Thank you so much. Thank you to ESCAP for inviting me to be part of this expert group. One of the slide that you talked about, Sanji, about the priorities of the member states, of the members of ESCAP, other than finance, a big percentage was actually inequality, marginalized and excluded groups, poverty, and economic insecurity. And I must say, coming from civil society and working with community groups, I'm happy to see that the whole work now and the focus on resilience is being looked at within the perspective of resilient planning, resilient governance, because for very long, resilience was put on communities. So, and while it sounds very sort of romantic to say communities are resilient, but it actually puts the burden on them rather than takes away the burden for them to find solutions to the problems. So I do think it's a very positive step that now resilience is being framed within what governments and others need to do in order to improve the situation of people. Now, of course, when we talk about the impact on communities and people, we know that the greatest impact falls on the most marginalized. And among the most marginalized are children, women and young people, elderly people, and people living in low-income neighborhoods, as well as people. So I think I want to focus a little bit on what are some of the impacts and what are some of the areas that resilience needs to be much more impactful to really change the lives of women and girls in our region. One is really, if we look at climate resilience, we talk a lot about climate resilience. We do know that data shows that by 2050, climate change and climate impacts may push up to 158 million more women and girls into poverty. So we are talking about a disproportionate impact on women and girls. And also will push more than 232 million women and girls into more food insecurity, because we know in impacts of climate, whether it's floods, whether it's heat, and other natural disasters, food insecurity is a very important aspect which we have to deal with. So I think the one area, so we need to focus on that. Within climate resilience, there's also today, we're talking a lot about the impact of heat, because we saw the heat maps that Daisuke shared, and heat has become a very big issue. Now, 2/3 of all the home-based workers in the world are in the Asia-Pacific region. Now, we know that when there's heat impacts, it is within the homes where we're often trapped within higher than 40 degrees Celsius temperature, especially in low-income settlements. The home-based workers and women who are looking after the work of care and children and elderly people are the most likely to suffer. So if you're saying 2/3 of all home-based workers are in the Asia-Pacific region, of this, much more than 75% are women and older people. So one is within the home that we're talking about. When the home is also your workplace, you're spending many, many hours in very high temperatures. Then there's, of course, the public space. And this is another area of heat is a big important issue, because as women have to commute, whether it's walking, whether it's taking public transport, again, I'm talking about the most vulnerable communities, not those of us who may have our own personal cars. What happens when public transport is not responsive enough? What happens to our streets, which are not walkable, which do not have shade? We know that, and especially people who work where the street is almost the workplace. So this includes your street vendors. This includes women like domestic workers who are mostly moving around from home to home. And today, the entire platform economy, the gig work, whether it's in the transport sector, whether it's in service or goods delivery, this is a new area of employment where many people spend most of their days on the street. So if we're looking at heat, that's another big issue there. There are enough studies that have also shown that heat stress increases violence against women and children. So we do know that this increases in the impact of violence very directly. So within this, if we look at the work of care, which falls primarily upon women, and in the Asia-Pacific, data shows us that women often spend up to 11 hours on the work of care. Yeah, and men are spending less than 1 hour on the work of care. So how are we, for example, in addition to this, if we look at things like collecting water in many of our cities, intermediate cities, 250 million hours a day are going on collecting water. And again, often this is done by women. And also 156 million girls in our region between the age of 10 and 19 lack access to basic hygiene and services. So I'm just trying to really emphasize on the human dimension of the impacts of climate, the impacts of poor urban design, poor urban planning, poor transport planning that many of our cities have traditionally had to deal with. And it is really very heartening to hear the examples from both Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, where there's a recognition, but also that this is something that has to be done with communities and with the most marginalized groups. This cannot be top-down exercises where the government is deciding on its own what is good for people. So I think really I'd like to focus, finally say that the risks of also for elderly, we do know that women make up more than 50% of the elderly population because biologically women live longer. So we're also seeing aging in all our societies, and this is not only your East Asian societies, but even in South Asia. We often talk about the demographic dividend in South Asia and especially India. At the same time, we have large numbers of older people. And we are not designing much of our infrastructure to address the needs of the older people. So the risks really are on health, on increased violence, on and economic vulnerability that people face. But I also saw a statistic which is a little alarming, that less than 3% of climate-related development finance in the Asia-Pacific region explicitly targets gender impacts and gender equity. Of course, it does get targeted under other financial budget heads, but I think less than 3% is a low number, and this is an ADB number, so I think it is relevant. So I'd like to end by saying that really we need to focus on really gender-responsive, people-centered ways of designing our policies, designing our programs for, one, safe and accessible public spaces, right? Because that are well-lit, walkable, and I've mentioned very often, which have amenities such as public toilets, green spaces, parks, and good transport networks, last mile connectivity and safety, to prevent the economic precarity, because we still know that in many of our countries, a large percentage of the poor, and within that women, work within the informal sector. So when they work within the informal sector, they do not have the advantages and the protections that is provided by things like insurance and other issues, and health impacts of climate, of heat, of floods, is very high on women and girls. We know from things like menstrual health to, babies that are born within these conditions face more precarity. So economic precarity is a very important one. We must address the issue of unpaid care work. This is not reducing, and as long, if you can change everything else, but still the burden of care work falls only upon women and girls, we will not improve the lives of our women in this region or anywhere in the world. So I really think that it has to be forefronted, the issue of the care work. Thirdly, I think the issue of safety and gender-based violence. We see every time there is any kind of disaster, violence against women increase, violence against children increases. We saw even during COVID that violence against women increased because they were stuck within the home. So I think my plea is really to all stakeholders in this whole of society approach, whole of government approach, to look at some of these as very central to the way that we design programs, not only for urban planning, urban design, mobility, but really response to all kinds of disasters in our region, so that we can truly improve the lives of the most vulnerable in our region. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Pratana. You linked to so many different SDGs and really kind of highlighted much of the discussion this week about the synergies across various initiatives. And one key point is, when we talk about urban resilience, we're not only talking about the environmental issues. Right? We have to talk about economic vulnerabilities, and I'm glad you pointed out COVID at the end, because that was obviously quite disruptive and devastating to many urban centers, but it was not an environmental disaster. It was not an economic, it ended up being an economic disaster, but it's something that cities and communities need to be able to prepare for. Any kind of economic or other kind of shock or stress is also important, and it has social implications, especially on the most vulnerable, as you pointed out. Rubina, welcome back. It's good to have you back again. You're our hope, the young and the future generations who are bringing innovations, new ideas, crowdsourcing data, and obviously you have different perspectives about how to engage youth, where you see the role of youth in co-designing and co-implementing many of the solutions. So over to you for your intervention.
Thank you, Gert, and thank you, ESCAP, for being inclusive of youth's presence in this room as always. Discussion so far has been extremely insightful for me to learn about ESCAP, Risks and Resilience Portal. If I can have the, yeah. Thank you. Let me just give it a try. Okay, yeah. So yeah, discussion so far has been extremely insightful to learn about ESCAP Risks and Resilience Portal. I would love to see how we can also include glaciers data and snow data, but we can have more discussion on that later. National policy from Bangladesh, SDG coordination from Sri Lanka, and community and safety data with gender focus from Safety Pin. I love the name, by the way, serves the purpose exactly. So every one of us has come at this from a different level with a different tool, but listening to all of it, it's a collective reminder that we are already all working towards the same goal, that is cities that are livable and resilient. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Rubina Adhikari from Nepal. I'm co-founder of Climate Qubit and also serve as the regional focal point of Children and Youth Major Group to UNEP. So let me start with where I come from, and it has already been mentioned in this room before, a city that is likely to suffer from high heat wave risk. Unfortunately, it is true, since Kathmandu is urbanizing at extraordinary speed, urban population is growing 4 times faster than infrastructure investment can respond. Air quality sits among not only Asia's worst, but also the world's. And flooding worsens every monsoon because drainage, land use, and development were never planned together. And the recent events of uprooting settlements from populated cities in Nepal are as a major example of why cities should have been planned better, not today, but decades ago. Nevertheless, during these times, it has also raised the innovative ideas from young people. Now we have sensors that monitor air quality, we have machines that purify airs, we have open spatial hazards mapping, as well as disaster mapping, among several others, which is setting the trajectory of young people in the right direction. They're already building the infrastructure of resilience. However, one thing to be noted, and is the main theme of the presentation today, is that the city boundary is where the analysis stops, which has also been absent in this room today so far, but the risks of Himalayan countries like Nepal and several others does not begin inside those boundaries. Now, to understand this, I would take you to upstream. 1.9 billion people, nearly a quarter of humanity, depends on water system that begins in Hindu Kush Himalaya region. It's a region that extends 3,500 kilometers spanning across 8 countries. Kathmandu taps, Nepal's electricity grid, Pakistan agriculture, Bangladesh river, none of these exist without the upstream cryosphere. Now, 10 of Asia's major rivers originate here. Nepal's entire hydropower sector depends on snow melt fed flows. Irrigation across South Asia traces back to Himalayan watershed. And yet, when I look at urban resilience frameworks across the region, the analysis almost never goes upstream. We plan for the city, we plan for the catchment, but we never plan for the glaciers. Now, the prices that we're paying is clearer than ever. As you can see in the screen, these are all the examples of what we called multi-hazard cascade. Now, it started up in the mountain as glaciers retreat in the place that we might never go, but it ultimately overwhelms downstream dams, bridges, and several infrastructures, resulting in huge economic loss that push the development only and only backwards. Now, the common layer in all of these are the risks that exist beyond the boundaries is never factored into the design, the financing, or the governance of the affected infrastructure. Therefore, in seeing this scenario, we can say that mountain disaster also becomes urban resilience failures. Today, we are still making billion-dollar decisions without accounting for the risk originating in the cryosphere. Now we have enough research. As a student from science myself, the science already exists and it has more than enough information available already. However, the real gap is the translation. So our platform, Himalayan Risk, which is the first product of Climate Qubit, takes the best available glacier and hydrology science and translate it into location-specific risk scores. We build the tools that make this risk legible to the people making capital decisions, to analyze the risks happening up at 5,000 meters and beyond, and to fast-track the development of the cities. We build the tools that makes this risk legible to the people making capital decisions. Now, my second point, moving beyond, would be to emphasize how collective efforts from young people is shaping across the region. Asia-Pacific Youth Synthesis Report was built by 5 regional youth networks together with ESCAP. We surveyed 269 young people across 32 countries, and its core finding matched everything I've said so far in this room, which is the ideas already exist. What's missing is access, finance, and the real say in decision making. And it's a full working of examples. If I have to name one, it's STS in Youth Korea, where young researchers who build localized STZ metrics and carry them straight into government policy across climate, energy, and urban development. They have mobilized across 1,500 young people and has 37 partners. Now, let me end with what we can do together, because we are not starting from zero. This room already recognizes young people as a partner in resilience. The opportunity now is simply to turn that recognition into integration. The first one would be to explicitly support youth-led initiatives, as I have given several examples here myself. We need funds not as beneficiaries, but as implementing partners with agency. Second would be to include voices beyond this room. We have also heard about rural youth, indigenous communities, informal settlement dwellers, mountain population. They are living this crisis and they're absent from this conversation, but dignitaries in this room together with young people like me can definitely be the voices. Third, make youth co-owners of decisions, not audiences, not as consultees, but as partners in designing, implementing, and evaluating climate and urban policy. I hope from today, whenever we sit to plan a city or make any decisions for it, we definitely think about what goes beyond the boundaries that has direct or indirect impact on its development. And next, we think about the role young people can play in actively shaping it. I would love to have this discussion further after this event as well. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you very much. As always, bringing passion to our discussions. Much appreciated. I think it's important that when you talk about boundaries, we're not only talking about geographic boundaries. Unfortunately, we see lots of boundaries drawn around decision-making, around who's involved, and it's really kind of needing to eliminate many of those boundaries, not just jurisdictional boundaries. I do think we have time, I'm told, for 3 to 4 questions, maybe, depending on the length of the question and the response. So if there are any in the audience who have a question, just raise your hand, and then you can activate the microphone on your desk or table. Jeremiah.
First of all, thank you to everyone for their presentations. It was very insightful and informative. My question would be, in the backdrop of many emerging technological solutions in the urban resilience space, what is one technological solution that you would like to see being implemented in your country or community? Thank you.
Why don't we start with Bangladesh and then go down the road? Here, we've got Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, India, and Nepal.
Thank you so much for a nice question. In our country, I think the green building concept, I want to establish it soon because it's very relevant to our national problems. Now we want to introduce green building concept in our country.
Thank you. For my country, we already have the green building concept. I would like to see a better solution, a deeper solution to identify the disaster risk areas in terms of better disaster risk mapping with technological assistance. That will be very helpful.
I don't have such a directly clear answer because I think we have a lot of technologies actually in the urban area, in my country as well as in many countries in Asia. But I think we have to recognize that technology has to be seen as an enabler to make change. So otherwise, technology itself can only reach so far and be so inclusive if it doesn't take people along with it. But having said that, I think probably one of the biggest areas that we are facing as a country is really both air and water pollution. And I think that's somewhere that we need to look towards more technologies. Thank you.
So for me, since Nepal and several other countries are developing at high speed, I would definitely say we need to score the risk. We need risk translation so that we know the investment that we're making is going in the right direction. And other that would be definitely data infrastructures, because again, coming from mountainous countries, we are still data deficit and still it's not open. So if that is feasible and is made accessible, then that would definitely solve a lot of problems. Thank you.
Thank you all. We'll also see over the course of the afternoon additional solutions being presented. I know we have some technological and innovations coming from China that will be presented later today as well. Maybe the question will be more fully answered in subsequent sessions as well. Further questions? For Nadia, I see that, Mr. Awal.
Thank you very much for your nice presentation. And I just want to raise one question to anybody. You can respond. And all the speakers and Ms. Sanji also articulated that there's in the data that what our member states articulated, that main problem is financing constraint, and another one is inequality. So I just think that yes, inequality and financing is actually parallel in our South Asia. So whenever you have a financing constraint, there is inequality. So major portion of the financing goes to the well-being of the society, and the rest is only for the marginalized and underprivileged. So from ESCAP point of view and other countries actually plan, especially Sri Lanka, how do you think that this financing constraint and gap should be mitigated by technology and focusing inequality, especially gender and marginalized people, to consider them in development process? Just we have buildings, resilient buildings for the suppose rich man, and suppose in Dhaka, Colombo, but the marginalized people, those who lacks the minimal basic human necessities, how to actually bridge the gap between inequality and financing through this session? And do you think that even ESCAP should extend their actually technology and also knowledge to our South Asian and Asian countries for best practices, whatever prevailing in Sri Lanka or in India or in other countries, to mutual understanding that yes, we have the best practice, we are doing this, and it works very well in Nepal, so why not in Bangladesh? So could we be friendly attitude towards each other so that we can actually implement this climate resilient urban city? Thank you.
Since you mentioned Sri Lanka, I think I have to go first. This is my perspective of the lengthy question. There are things that we can learn from each other, as you mentioned at the end. For example, our country has learned from Bangladesh, from India, from Nepal, and vice versa. But when it comes to the financial constraints and the marginalized groups, and how we can ensure that the marginalized groups get the benefit out of what we are providing, and also how we can get them also involved in resolving these financial constraints. It's a multifaceted answer, I would say. It has different aspects. For example, the first thing, when we talk about marginalized groups and getting their involvement, is to ensure a way that's conducive for them as well, to make sure that they get involved in the labor force in some way. Because countries like us, especially if I talk about my country, Sri Lanka, we have to improve our production economy. We must. And in doing that, we cannot afford to leave anyone behind without being involved in the labor force. But when it comes to marginalized groups like children or women or certain other groups, perhaps elders or differently abled people, there are things that they can do and they can't do. So it is the responsibility of the government and the society both to identify those and get them aligned in such a way that they also feel part of it. They feel like doing something, and their contribution gets into the economy in a meaningful way. And also in resolving the financial constraints. countries like us depend a lot on donor assistance. But I think, I mean, we are very grateful for that. But rather than depending constantly on donor financial assistance, I think what countries like us around the world should do is to get these assistance, the financial assistance and the technical assistance to inbuild the technical capability so that you can start producing, start working on it, doing something and, making the earning yourself and you can move one step ahead. That has to be a planned and a coordinated process.
I'll just offer a very brief comment in response, and then we'll finish up this session. I think, when oftentimes I hear there's plenty of climate finance, it's just not getting spent or it's not getting accessed. I think we need to kind of be a bit more nuanced in the discussion. When we say financing, it means a lot of things. It means flow of funds. There's a lot of flow of funds into projects at the local level. Much of that actually stays within the primary cities in most countries, whereas the greatest need might be in the emerging cities, the smaller and intermediate cities, where there's already an infrastructure gap, and there may be less of a gap in those larger cities that have institutional and financial capacities. But it's much more difficult to facilitate that flow of funds into those smaller communities. And so that really means that discussion needs to go to investment. And the investment is not just the flow of funds, it's the investment in the capacity building, in the institutional building, and identifying the projects, doing the pre-feasibility. Those are all investments that facilitate ultimately a flow of funds to where they're needed. But again, it's a much more broad discussion that needs to take place. It's not just financing generally. It's where's the need, where's the investment going, and oftentimes some of those decisions are made where it's simply easier to work with those cities that have capacities that can implement projects, but they may not have the greatest need. And so that's where I hope some of the discussion goes in the future, is where is the investment needed and what kind of investments will facilitate that funding. Okay. With that, let me close the panel and again extend my appreciation to the very gender weighted, I don't know how to describe the panel, but it's good to see a women-dominated panel for a change. Thank you very much for your participation.
Please give a round of applause. Thank you very much, Kurt, for the moderation. So we have been discussing about governance and planning. We will now move into the next section under the Urban Resilience in Action, Integrated Approaches in Asian Pacific Cities. And with that, I will invite Ms. Bernadia Chandadewi to moderate us for the first part of the session. And as she introduces the speakers, okay. Welcome a photo for the first panel. Thank you very much. SG Bernadia, you have the floor.
Very good afternoon, everyone. You still have energy to continue the session? You still have it? I trust this session will be very interesting because it talks about action. And in the previous session, you have seen also... Oh, I'm the only lady now. Okay. You designed it? Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Welcome, all the panelists. So I'm the most beautiful in this panel. No, just kidding. Anyway, thank you so much, and welcome all the panelists to this session. We heard just now a lot of information about risks, disasters, and you can also see from the maps that the place we live not considered safe, looking at the heat, urban heat that not only face here in Asia, Asian cities, but also in Europe. And you can see that this already becoming challenges to almost people in the planet. So, but I don't want you to feel depressed by all of those risks that have been identified and also kind of disasters that happen, because there are already a lot of actions at the local level, particularly, which show how cities also trying to improve resiliency, the level of resiliency, which also create safety, good environment, as well as prosperity for the people who live there. So without further ado, let me first invite Mr. Wei Chen, Deputy Director, Ministry of Housing and Urban Rural Development of China. You're familiar with how impressive China is. They managed to reduce more than 50% of poverty, people living in the poverty. So I understand that Mr. Chen will be speaking about sponge city policies. This is also another term, sponge, sponge cities. It is the one term that if you're not familiar with urban, this is one of the approaches that have been using also to support this nature ecosystem. Please, Mr.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Distinguished Secretary General Bernadia, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to share China's decade-long experience in sponge city construction. Back in 2013, President Xi Jinping put forward the vision of sponge cities, featuring natural rainwater retention, infiltration, and purification. In 2015, China issued national guidelines to roll out systematic construction. Rooted in ancient Chinese water governance wisdom, like terraced water storage. And Sponge City also draw on international LID and WSUD series. Different from traditional fast drainage urban system, we adopt the 6 principle framework: infiltration, retention, storage, purification, utilization, and discharge. To jointly realize flood mitigation, water resource recycling, aquatic ecosystem restoration, and better living environments. Over the past decade, China has launched pilot and demonstration programs across 90 cities, covering plains, hills, coastal, mountain, and northern inland regions, with diverse climates and terrains. We have advanced work in 4 core areas. First, we built a top-down planning system. All prefecture-level cities have formulated special sponge city plans. New districts follow sponge standard from design, while old communities carry out phase retrofits. Second, we delivered over 15,000 integrated projects. We deploy permeable pavements, sunken green spaces, rain gardens, and constructed wetland in campuses viaduct vacant lots, urban parks, and aging residential compounds to absorb rainwater locally and ease pressure on drainage pipeline. This picture shows the sponge project in China. Here are some pictures. Third, a complete national standard system is now in place. Sponge requirements have been embedded into national codes for architecture, roads, landscape, and drainage. Fourth, a full green industrial chain has taken shape. New technologies, eco-materials such as construction, waste-based permeable bricks, and a full-cycle series covering planning, construction, and operation have emerged, ready for global operation. Sponge City construction strongly supports China's dual carbon goals. It provides replicable, low-carbon solution to boost urban climate resilience, control floods, and restore urban water ecology. We sincerely welcome international partners to visit Chinese sponge city sites, exchange technologies, and carry out joint research and industrial cooperation. China will keep promoting cross-border exchanges in green urban development to tackle climate challenges hand in hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wei, for a very interesting presentation on the Sponge City. And actually, this China Sponge City has been becoming one of the world's most widely recognized approach to integrate planning, to also absorb the water, and also part of the climate mitigation and adaptation as well. Thank you so much. And I'm sure there will be a lot of questions later on from the participants, how to create sponge cities in our countries as well. Let me move now to the second speaker. We have here Mr. Rafi Teja, Commissioner of Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu, India. Actually, Coimbatore is one of the pilot projects of Urban Act. So we have listened to you earlier, and I'm sure you have more to share, especially related to urban resilience. You have the floor, sir.
To the distinguished panelists and all the audience here, a very good afternoon to everyone. I represent the city of Coimbatore. So I represent the city of Coimbatore. This comes from the southern part of India, and it's at the confluence of Eastern and the Western Ghats, a very beautiful city. I would like to welcome all of you to come visit our city sometime. And so this city is basically has an extent of 257 square kilometer with a population of 2.2 million. Apart from it, it's also called the Manchester of South India and the pump city of India, because it is famous for the textile industry and the automobile industry. So just to give a peek into the city, it has nearly 14.5 billion USD of GDP, and the per capita income is 3,200 USD. And we have a lot of various industries in the city, textiles, engineering, auto factory, agro and dairy. So, having said this, the city has a lot of economic potential, but however, all the growing cities in India, we have environmental challenges, flood risks, and heat island effects. So there's a very dire necessity to concentrate on these issues as well, along with the economic development. So as part of urban resilience, Coimbatore has had taken some initiatives, and I would like to take you through some examples that we have done in our city. So the first project I would like to explain is about the Seven Lakes project in Coimbatore. So just a brief history into it. Coimbatore was earlier ruled by various dynasties, and nearly 400 years ago, for the drinking water purpose, the kings then created 7 lakes in the city, taking water from the river Noyal and filling and creating a chain of tanks of 7 different water bodies, which was used for drinking purposes and agriculture purpose back then. You can see the map for the reference. These are various lakes that have been created. But however, over the period of time, these lakes started having the usual urban wastewater issues, like the sewage was let into the lakes, the wastewater was let into the lakes, and these lakes became pollution sources for the city, which otherwise was for the drinking water purpose. So then in Coimbatore city, we've taken multiple steps in ensuring that these lakes are regenerated, and a lot of work has been going into it. For the past 5 years we have worked, and now we have made these lakes into the modern recreational spaces for the people of Coimbatore, as well as they act and help us in our flood risk mitigation as well. So what we have done basically is we have desilted all these lakes, and we've improved the water quality by putting some treatment plants in the inlet of the lakes. We have removed a lot of encroachments. Nearly we have reclaimed 28 acres of land combinedly. So just for an idea, the 7 lakes together form 850 acres of water space. And we could reclaim additional 28 acres because over the period of time, the urban sprawl and these lakes got encroached. So I think this is where our local political support was required. And rightly so, the local city councillors and the members of Legislative Assembly have helped us in convincing the people that this is very important for our environment and climate. And hence we could reallocate them into tenements that we created specifically for these encroaches. So we could successfully rehabilitate these people from the area. And nearly 7,680 households we could rehabilitate. And we could create a nice lakefront corridor, which is non-motorized. And we could add nearly 5.6 megawatt of solar energy in these lake areas. So the challenges we faced in this was we had a lot of encroachments, and we lost a lot of lake storage capacity initially. And there was very poor management of these lakes. And initially we had a little political resistance as well in carrying this forward. But however, with the strong leadership, as I told, our local leaders' support and our Legislative Assembly members' support, we could convince the community that this is important. And we also roped in expertise from local universities like IIT Madras, Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, and we could take scientific know-how from them. And we also got support from international bodies like Urban Act, Indian Urban Act, GIZ, in giving us technical support in carrying this projects further. So overall, now if you see, the city is people really enjoy these places and they really appreciate the initiative. So something which started off with a lot of resistance is now being accepted and enjoyed by the people of city of Coimbatore. The another example I would like to take you forward is so this is called Semmori Punga, which translates to Semmori in Tamil means classical language. So as you all know, Tamil is one of the ancient languages of the world. So Semmori means a classical language, and Punga means park. So this park was designed, was conceptualized in the year 2010 when there was a World Classical Tamil conference. And then it was proposed that there should be a park symbolizing the language of Tamil. And hence a park was created. And it is very interesting also to observe that the land in which this park was built was earlier a central prison in Coimbatore. So the prison was moved out and a park is created. So it is one of the best examples of climate mitigation and adaptation. So this entire park is around 50 acres of land. It has a lot of themes in it. We have herbal garden, aroma garden, rose garden. There are nearly more than 1 million plants have been planted with more than 1,400 species of plants. So, and this has become a great recreational space for the city. And nearly we had more than 1 million visitors so far in just a span of 6 months. So it was launched 6 months back. So what helped us here is, again, we could reduce a lot of urban heat effect. We could enhance our green cover. And there are a lot of rainwater harvesting structures in this park, which helped us improve our groundwater levels as well. And in a great way, it supports the healthy and active lifestyles of the people of Coimbatore. And we've also ensured that all this is managed remotely through IoT, so that there's minimal human interface as well. But however, what I would like to share and our learnings from these projects is that there's a lot of regional cooperation that helped us in conceptualizing and implementing these projects. We had support from international bodies, we had support from KFW, we had support from Urban Act, and they could give us technical capacity in this. Also, we learned a lot from the peer-to-peer cities in India, mainly from cities like Ahmedabad, Indore, Bhopal, Madurai. So these cities helped us learn on maintaining the water bodies. And we also realized that if there's if there is a good access to climate finance, we were lucky enough to have gotten finance from Union Government of India under the Smart City project. So a good climate finance potential can actually create a lot of good recreational spaces for the city. And so as we also had a discussion yesterday about nationally determined contributions. So Coimbatore was one of those pioneer cities which could actually understand the concept of NDCs and try to implement in its projects. And all these projects are aligned as per our NDCs. So it is always beneficial to align the projects as per the NDCs. And finally, there was a lot of multi-stakeholder partnerships. As I said, there was rehabilitation, there was non-motorized transport. So we had a lot of interaction between various departments of government, the transport department, the public works department, the urban rehabilitation department, the local corporation, the police, the revenue department. So there was a lot of interdepartmental coordination that was required in this. So I would like to conclude by saying that cities like Coimbatore, which are not the major cities, but definitely the biggest among the tier 2 cities, have a lot of potential in implementing climate resilient projects, provided we have good climate financing, and the local political support is definitely in line with these projects. And definitely there will be a lot of support from the local politicians as well for the projects like these. And we are thankful for the regional cooperation from various international bodies that gave us. So I think all together could help us in implementing projects like this. And we would like to seek more support in the future for our wastewater management as well. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Rafi, for presenting a very beautiful Coimbatore and also very interesting initiatives that you have in Coimbatore. And also you highlighted the importance of partnerships, multi-level governance. Also you managed to obtain or to receive fundings from different kind of agencies. I think it's quite fortunate for you to be able to work with a lot of international agencies. Thank you so much. The question I have later for you, how we can upscale this also. Maybe you can come up with some tips, some recipes, some strategies, because convincing community is not easy. Sometimes, you have to have meetings with them more than 1,000 times in order to convince the people there for good projects or initiative that you might have. But I will give you a time to think. I would like now to invite the next speakers. We have here Mr. Dindo Kampilan, Regional Director of International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN Asia Regional Office. I don't know, it's part of destiny. I have been with him since Monday, the same panels. Maybe this is the last one, the big one.
Hopefully.
So yeah, please, you have a floor.
Yes, I just realized for those of you who've been here since Monday, this is the 5th session where you see Bernardia and Dindo tandem. So at the risk of causing PowerPoint fatigue, I'm not showing any slides. Instead, I'm just going to go through a few key reflections about I've actually heard since the beginning of this session today. I'd like to start with the first one, urban resilience. This is what we've been talking about. It seems we have associated it with the absence of shocks, absence of stress, absence of vulnerabilities. But I think you have also noticed recently the discourse on urban resilience has changed from just the absence of to the presence of. The presence of green spaces, the presence of regenerative landscapes, the presence of circular economies, and the presence of livable communities. If you ask the just newly re-elected governor of Bangkok, what is his dream, it's not resilient Bangkok. It's not even green Bangkok. His dream is to put Bangkok in the world's top 20 livable cities. And so when you ask him what can we do together, he said, help us make Bangkok livable. The point I'm making is we need to have a more balanced, nuanced understanding and targeting of urban resilience. Not just the absence of, but also the presence of. And I think that is probably a key takeaway message from this session today. Second, you may have wondered, what am I doing here? I'm from IUC and I'm nature. When you think nature, you think the wilderness, you think of remote islands and ecosystems. But you probably haven't realized that nature and cities are interconnected. For example, I've just been recently in Hong Kong, and I'm sure many of you have visited Hong Kong. When you think Hong Kong, you think Kowloon, you think the skyscrapers in Central. But 40% of Hong Kong territory is green, is protected area by law. 40%. But many of us don't see that because when we land down at the airport, we go straight to Kowloon, and we only see the skyscrapers. Many of you probably come from cities that unknowingly are actually among the world's biodiversity hotspots. When you say biodiversity hotspots, we think forests, we think the high mountains. If you are from Ibu Bernarda, you come from Jakarta. Jogja, okay. So Jakarta, Makassar, those are among the world's biodiversity hotspots. If you come from Sydney, if you come from Baku or Guangzhou, these cities are among the world's biodiversity hotspots. So we must realize that cities aren't just human-made, built environments. They are actually stewards of the nature's important, the world's important natural capitals. The one thing I also noticed today in our discussion, we have been referring to cities as if they are monolithic, homogeneous ecosystems. Many of us live in cities, and we know that the whole spaces of cities are very different. If you come to Bangkok, and the only place you go to is Chatuchak, you can never really say you come to Bangkok, right? What I'm saying is we need to recognize that cities they represent a mosaic of diverse ecosystems. I was really glad that Madame DG from Sri Lanka, where are you, mentioned about Colombo. Let's talk about wetlands. Ramsar is the convention on wetlands, right? Many of the Ramsar sites, like Colombo, are actually in cities. Besides Colombo, what are they? Udaipur in India, Haikou in China. I could go on and on. I forgot the place here in Bangkok, just down south. Bang Pu, just near the airport. That's a Ramsar site. So the point is, let's not divide the world into urban as built environment and rural as being nature and natural ecosystem. Cities, they are home to the world's key natural assets. But then, how do we act on those? The first one is really to design, and this is urban planning, not just urban planning, but really looking at the synergies between urban ecosystems and other types of ecosystems beyond the boundaries of the cities. Example, if you've lived long enough here in Bangkok, day by day, and if you've been coming to ESCAP every morning and the afternoon, the first thing that comes to your mind, oh, there's going to be flooding again. What about air quality? But we know that the roots of those problems are not within just the boundaries of Bangkok. We talk about crop burning, agricultural practices up north and even beyond the boundaries of Thailand. When we talk about flooding, it's not just Chao Phraya as we see it here. It's all about the river basins and all of the tributaries and basically the lower Mekong. So for those of us concerned with urban resilience, let us remember the interconnectedness of urban ecosystems with the rest. And we talk about, for example, actions on ecosystem services. Third one, because cities are associated with the built environment, we always think of it as concrete, cities of concrete. But right now, we talk more and more about hybrid solutions. How do you design communities that combine green and gray? So more and more, we talk about green and gray hybrid solutions. I really like the sample of the Swan City. But for example, in Hong Kong, I was just there a few weeks ago, our key partner there is the Hong Kong Civil Engineering and Development Department. We've just launched the new nature-based solution guidelines for civil engineering works in Hong Kong, which is to really help urban planners look at the value and the potential of synergizing gray and green infrastructure together. A fourth one is also to look at how cities impact on other ecosystems. We often think of the problems of cities within our boundaries. We often forget that what we do in cities impact the others. Let's talk about plastic pollution, right? When you talk about plastics, you cannot imagine and you may not realize how it impacts on marine biodiversity. The leakage and the microplastics that go all the way to the Gulf of Thailand and beyond, and even to the high seas. So we who live in cities must be mindful of the fact that while we often complain about the impact of other ecosystems to us, we do have an impact as well on these ecosystems beyond. So having said that, what is next for cities? We have heard about IUCN, and we're here in ESCAP and SID9 because we have state members and countries. But you know, one category of members in IUCN are actually subnational governments, because we believe that conservation and nature action, the frontliners are not just people sitting in capitals. They are also the national governments. And that's why we like working with UCLG. We invite you, if you come from cities, to be part of the subnational category members of IUCN. What are examples? I mean, Gilgit in Pakistan. I don't know if somebody's from Gilgit here. Jeju province is a member of IUCN. Hamilton City in New Zealand. Leishui in China. These are just examples of cities that we have. Finally, and I think because I see a lot of young people in the room, one of the important pieces of work that we do is about building the next generation environmental champion. We have a regional initiative called Greening the Engineers and Architects. Because we keep complaining that we design great infrastructure, but we forget we don't have the people trained to do that. What is greening the engineers? After they finish university and learn how to draw great infrastructure, they come to IUCN, and we help them understand not just area or size, but also the value of natural capital. In the end, it's really important that we recognize cities are home to the world's key natural assets, and that we look at nature not just part of the problem, but as part of a solution to urban resilience. Kapun ka.
And salamat, maraming salamat. And it was quite inspiring because we have to come up with second thoughts actually. Are we designing cities for concrete things or for cars or for other things, but are we designing cities for the people? Because like what you mentioned about planning beyond boundaries, that's very, very true. But there is no kind of framework in Asia particularly in which planning can be done beyond the boundaries. This is a struggle. So what Jakarta has done, just little intermezzo, Jakarta has a very good public transport systems. They are progressing quite well. They have a BRT, they also have underground. And what Jakarta gives, they give incentive to local governments outside Jakarta in order to expand the tracks on the, what you call it, the fleet, bus fleets. They can make it because they have some kind of incentive, but there is no kind of mechanism. How can we work together beyond those boundaries? But thank you so much. I think this is also quite triggering some of thoughts, how can we balance between green and gray developments and see nature as a capital, as a value, because land price in urban centers is so expensive. You want to go for economic benefits by selling the lands to properties for companies, or are you building something that for the people? And because with resilient, as you say, it's also investment that you cannot see immediately coming up as a short-term benefit. This is also quite interesting to discuss. With Bangkok, I remember that Bangkok governor, the first time he got elected, he just planted so many trees. And now Bangkok, I don't live in Bangkok, but those who live in Bangkok, maybe you feel there are more greens in the city. But anyway, you live in Bangkok. So, okay, anyway, thank you so much for giving us some thoughts on this possibilities. And okay, now let's move to the next and last speaker. I was just asking him whether he's part of the young generation because he looks so young. Because this is also part of intergenerational dialogue. But thank you. Let me invite Mr. Stanislav Kim, Regional Team Leader and Senior Disaster Risk Reduction Advisor at the UNDP Bangkok Regional Hub. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Actually, just at lunch, we'll be discussing early retirement type of stuff, and I feel actually I'm quite close to that, but really nice to hear that someone still considers me as a part of younger generation. In my speech, so, I really tried to avoid probably my PowerPoint, which been originally planned, in a way that to have a bit more live type of dialogue. And whatever I would say, actually, it's very much based on UNDP experience and implementation of quite many projects in resilience building. And whatever I would say, it's not, isolated type of stuff, but it's some sort of knowledge we've been able to collect by implementing hundreds of projects, in decades, yeah. And to be honest, we are learning. I mean, I don't think that anyone within the UN family or international community can tell that, they know what to do. And one of the dilemma, actually, which we are facing, it's always, through the prism of our specialization. Yeah, so wherever you're environmental engineer, you believe the green is the most important. If you're a transport specialist, that's a transport. And that refers me to the dilemma of my meeting with the Minister of Education in my country, which is Kazakhstan. Once we've been promoting biodiversity type of curriculum, and he said, you already third or fourth. Everyone is coming to me with the different elements they believe we need to include. And we have only number of hours actually in a learning program, and it's only one ministry, and what shall I do? I guess the same story with urban development. And for UNDP, we have a probably very unique mandate, which is development and about everything, and then it's so difficult to understand what exactly we should do. Because for many people may ask, why you have such a big portfolio? Yeah, and only in this region, in resilience is more than 350 million in the form of grants. And we know that grants is very special, it's not loans. Yeah, and at the same time, it's not about money, because whatever I seen in the very beginning of session, many colleagues said that one of the key concerns is resources. I don't think this is the absolutely top priority. The point is how we spend this money, how we use it, in a way, how effectively. It's also the issue of prioritization. Prioritization in a sense, what are real priorities? I've been in the country office, at the regional hub, in a different type of, for many years, and irrespectively of different official type of statements, for me, the very key indicator is a state budget, or city budget, actually. Whatever you just analyze and what for, we are ready to spend this or that amount of money. And I would see that in many cases, for example, for urban settings, infrastructure would prevail, as well as social economic development, because this is something which is on top of agenda. And this is, in a sense that we are ignoring, that changing environment around us. And wherever the development itself create a bit of trap. Some countries which have been resilient and stable and green for decades, right now, due to the sense of development, they are full of concrete, and then, they're flooded. And for me, when someone said that we don't have enough information, for example, in a resilience building, that's true, but not always true. Because we are living in the region, actually, the floods is not a rare type of event. It's happened every season, already for 1,000 years. Yeah, so it's not that big secret from any of us. It's not a question if, but it's a question when. And even in this context, we know when it will happen, because the rainy season is more or less, some variations, but nevertheless. And that's probably one of the dilemma why it's not happening. We are in the last cycle of Sendai framework. Right now, there is a lot of discussions what would be after 2030. And it's also for Paris Agreement, for SDGs, for many other type of stuff. And for me, you know, this Sendai agenda and disaster risk reduction is a big question. So what shall we do, you know, like in a different way? Because midterm evaluation of Sendai also demonstrated that we are moving not that great. So we do understand majority of countries have different strategies, DRR strategies, resilience, recovery, whatever. But despite all these documents, actually, I mean, we cannot really say that we are living in a safe world, cities or countries. Yeah? So that's probably the key type of element. And by analyzing what we are doing, we see that governance, you know, the system, how it is organized, one of the key challenge. Not criticizing, yeah, because it's been built with a purpose, yeah, but the problem, the issue that, I mean, the environment around changing much faster wherever we are ready to adopt and adjust it. That's why, I mean, for UNDP, we really concentrate on this governance type of governance element. You know, really in the moving of a bit of paradigm, yeah? So in a way that governance need to be in the heart of all the reforms. Wherever, I mean, in every country, in every city, we will formulate our understanding what for, what development mean, and it would be different, yeah? So it's not like everyone the same. For particular city, what development of particular city mean? And that could be, you know, like help us to tailor the system and then to balance, I mean, all the interventions and everything. And the point that we need to learn, because the worst case happened with any disasters when we are not learning. When after every flood, I mean, we again repeat the same mistakes, which raise a lot of questions, yeah? So that's why this understanding of problems and learning need to be integrated in a planning and some other stuff. And then, actually, we will reach blue, green, orange. I don't know how many type of things I heard, you know, like, and sometimes I'm not following, yeah? But everyone who made such a statement, they are very convenient, you know, like in a few minutes you really believe this is something which is needed. But then, I mean, our national counterparts, governors, you know, they have this dilemma. And for that, you know, this dialogue and discussions is something which is important. And then, I mean, it's all will be, you know, like for the proper planning. And I guess with resilience, we really need to follow whatever's happening with infrastructure. Because, I mean, in infrastructure, you plan, you finance, you implement, you have something, then probably struggling, but that's another story, yeah? In case of resilience and many other elements, including green, we plan, but then we not finance, and then we are discussing why it's not materializing, yeah? So probably we need to be a bit more, you know, like logical in this type of sequence and really to see that we consider resilience seriously in a way that it's not a question of choice. Yeah, so we don't have a choice because in many countries, in many cities, we don't have such a choice. You either, you know, suffering and wherever you put all the development under the risk, or you change something. Yeah, so this is a dilemma which is on top of our agenda, and all the projects which we are mobilizing and implementing right now, it's all about this dilemma. Also, how to connect all these development projects we're implementing in something which will be concentrated and also support our national counterparts to find the best solution for them. Sorry, you've been longer than expected.
No, it's okay. Okay. Then, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Anyway, thank you. It was also quite inspiring. I think you gave us some thoughts, what our development is for. And this is quite fascinating because sometimes we know that the things can be changed, but why the change is so slow? But thank you so much. You have heard excellent presentation from 4 gentlemen here. So I now open the floor for Q&A. Yes, you have 1, 2, and I see people in the back. Are you also enjoyed this session? Yes? Yes, 3? Okay. Another one? Wait, only so. Let me take 3 questions. 1, 2, 3. Only gentlemen, you don't want asking. Okay, anyway, so go ahead, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you all for your presentations. I thought they were excellent. So my question is for Mr. Dindo from IUCN. You mentioned the new guidelines for the civil engineering department in Hong Kong, which I think sounds fantastic. And given, as you know, that NBS or nature-based solutions are promoted for their ability to deliver multiple benefits, ones that are usually coordinated across different departments operating often in silos, I'm curious how those guidelines deal with that coordination problem. Do they include concrete mechanisms or guidance for joint planning? That's all right.
それでこっちにこう逃げてきました。
Yeah. Yeah, so I was just wondering if those guidelines include, you know, concrete mechanisms or guidance on joint planning between, for example, water planning and parks departments, and if so, what that looks like. Thank you.
Before we answer, ask him and then please mention your name as well.
My name is Anton Jayakudi. My name is Anton Jayakudi from Sri Lanka. I need to get to know from China regarding the sponsity. What kind of geomorphology you use, river basin or catchment and river basin, or maybe wetland or any other geomorphology you use for the sponsity for designing?
Thank you. I will take a second round later. Yeah, hopefully the ladies can also ask questions. Okay, please.
Hi, thank you for all your wonderful presentation. So my question is for, my name is Hong Xiang Wang from ESCAP, and my question is for Mr. Ravi from India. So many cities across Asia and the Pacific face similar challenges such as urban floodings. So based on your experience, what is the most important lesson for the Coimbatore project that you would like to share with other cities?
Thank you to all the questions. Let me ask you, please.
Thank you.
Go to you and then, you and then you.
So what we've noticed in a lot of talk about urban resilience is we often think of it as simply risk associated with the physical aspects of nature. So we often, and that's what point I was making, we often undervalue and underestimate that cities hold important biodiversity values. So what is happening in the case of Hong Kong, many of our city governments and city planning, they would have guidelines on, you know, how many floors of buildings you can have, what are the zones that you can have. When we started talking about nature-based solution, first is to make the governments aware that there is such a thing as potential biodiversity impact when you start creating infrastructure. But for them, you talk to civil engineers, they have no clue, and I don't think they would even care about species or even about ecosystems. So the first point was actually valuation, creating awareness that in cities there are important biodiversity values and co-benefits. As a result of that, and I'm really proud of Hong Kong, SAR, as a government, that they put together the guidelines of Hong Kong SAR that incorporate biodiversity impacts and mitigation, that when they approve the construction of building, they look at the key biodiversity area map. Okay. They look at ecosystems in terms of maybe water flows. That's a good start. And I think it's not about we need to start establishing NBS guidelines for cities. It's really integrating nature and biodiversity into existing guidelines.
Maybe you can send the guideline to all of us, and that's quite interesting because when you do nature-based solution, sometimes you don't think much benefit, you know. So we started to have a cost and benefit analysis on doing the NBS. I think this is very interesting. Thank you so much. Let's move to Mr. Chen.
Thank you. I beg your pardon. Could you explain your question? Give me more details.
I'm asking you, you use for your design sponsity, you use a wetland or maybe a river basin or a catchment for designing of your sponge city? What kind of land means geomorphological lands you use for your city? Because I saw that at the middle, a lot of water.
He can have.
Okay. I mean, yes, indeed.
You speak Chinese too?
Not, I don't speak Chinese. This is another stereotype. I speak Russian, so I guess by my accent you can understand. Yeah, so I look different, but it's. Regarding, I mean, your question, you know, the point of Sponge City, you know, like it's applicable for different type of landscapes, for different type of situations. The point is really try to explore as much as possible, you know, like the nature type of capacity of the territory by balancing hydrology, biodiversity, nature-based solutions and different elements to maximize the nature power, you know, like really to support our engineering efforts in a management of floods and different type, water management and different type of elements. So that's why for your question, it's all in one. Yes, so it's not like either for wetlands or either for this. This is relevant in this context. And by the way, right now, so Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Thailand, they are discussing Sponge City concept implementation. That's why I'm aware about it. And also regarding the first question, which is a very interesting, guidelines. I mean, just last week we had a meeting here in Bangkok discussing Sponge City application in Thailand. And from practical experience, in order to agree at the city level for certain elements of Sponge City implementation, you need to consult with 50 different government bodies. 50. So, I mean, by guidelines, it's a bit difficult to manage. Yes, so you may give a generic type of direction how it should be done, but then that's an issue. And from, as our colleagues from Thailand said, the most challenging counterpart, it's the Ministry of Culture.
Culture?
Yes. Because of in Ayutthaya, which is next to Bangkok, yeah, and in order to deal with the flood in Bangkok, you need to start up to the river, yes, so you cannot do much because it's a historical site, yeah, you cannot construct, you cannot do anything. And every ministry, they are following their strict regulation. That's why for us, the biggest problem here for Sponge City implementation, not money. Money are available, few development banks are ready to support it. But, you know, like how to manage all this very complex institutional setup. And yeah, so guidance is technical possible, but then its implementation or adaptation to another country require a dramatic review of local type of situation. Sorry.
No, thank you. That's also very helpful. Thank you so much. Mr. Rafi?
So I think just to clarify, your question is how we can learn from cities like Coimbatore in helping other cities about the flood risk mitigation. Yeah. So I would like to start by saying that one of our engineers in Chennai, so initially I worked in Chennai as well, one of the cities in Tamil Nadu. So a very a good wisdom he has given me. He said, so this is in a context when we had a huge flood in the year 2023 and the entire city of Chennai was submerged for 3 continuous days, a continuous 72 hours. Most part of the city was inundated with the water and we were trying to help people come out. And from that experience, I would like to say, so he said, water knows where to flow, but we don't know where to build the buildings. So I think that always stayed with me, that wisdom, is water only knows to flow. If you just drop it, you know, as Pascal's law, everyone knows here, it just flows. But we, as human beings, we have somehow have not yet mastered the way of constructing our buildings and the way of planning these things in our day-to-day planning. And I'm happy that there are building guidelines now which also take part of, which also take care of water absorption as well. So coming to the point, so I would like to say that most of the cities, if you see, have something called core area and the added area. So there are some cities which have the older part of cities which are very densely packed and which have very closely knit buildings and all. And there are some and there are some areas in the exteriors which are somewhat relatively less dense. So I think we have to have a strategy of climate mitigation, the mitigation and adaptation aspects of it. So if you see in the core city, I think we should have adaptation strategies where you need to construct stormwater drains, you need to have pumping station, you need to have you need to have buildings which are built a little above the ground level. Whereas in the added areas, you need to have a lot of water bodies. You should have parks which can hold your water structures together. So if you ask me as a whole, we should respect the flow of water. We should protect our water bodies. We should protect our major channels. And wherever we have dense areas, we should try to evacuate water as soon as possible so that everyone is safe even during a flood time. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. There is a sign I need to close this session. My apology, but please go to each speaker if you are interested in more conversation, having more conversation with them. So this has been wonderful session. Thank you so much to all four gentlemen who are here. Please join me to give a big, big, big applause to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu Bernadia, for your able moderation. We will continue this session. So for the questions that haven't been raised, you can ask in the following session. And with that, I welcome Mr. Ricardo Moroso from UN Habitat to moderate the session. I also welcome the speakers to please make your way to the table. Thank you very much. And while we transition, we welcome the group photo of the panel session.
Okay, hello everyone, and thanks for remaining with us until the last session of this expert group meeting. I'm Ricardo Maroso from UN Habitat, and on behalf of our agency, I'm really happy to collaborate with ESCAP and with all the partners that are here today. Yeah, so I invite the speakers for this last session to join us here. So Mr. Dang Dao, please join us, okay. So we will continue now the discussion on integrated approaches in the Asia Pacific, in cities, but as you saw, we have partners and speakers from all levels of government and also from regional institutions. And that's why we want to continue this discussion now with this last session, focusing on examples and practical experiences of regional cooperations, going from community-led approaches, regional development programs, and networks and coordinations of youth groups. As for the other session, we will go through a round of presentation from our speakers that I will now introduce, and then we will have some space for question and answer. I rely on the organizers for the timing so that we respect the available time and we leave some space for summary and closing remarks. So today with us we have three great speakers representing really different groups, so bringing a variety of experience for all of us to discuss on. We have Mr. Andoko Ngadiman, the Indonesia National Director for Habitat for Humanity International, so national representative of a global and really active organization. We have Ms. Marlena Knilf, the Urban Resilience Advisor for the Urban Act program with JZ Thailand, and Mr. Dang Dao Nguyen, the co-founder and co-president of the Young Urbanists of Southeast Asia, joining us from Vietnam here today. So we will start with the presentation now. Please write down your questions that later can be shared on with our speakers. So, Mr. Andoko, over to you to start for the presentation.
Greetings, esteemed leaders and also for participants. I'm Andoko Ngadiman, National Director for Habitat Indonesia. So allow me to introduce about Habitat a bit. We work in 70 countries, 14 across Asia Pacific. The mission is that everyone deserves adequate housing. So basically we do in 3 ways. Improving housing conditions for families, and the second one, transforming housing system so that it works better for the poor. And the third one is that inspiring local communities to take action. So today, I would like to share about community-led approaches to resilient housing and neighborhood development. So across Asia, I think it's being shared before, is compounding risks about including climate escalating risks from extreme heats and flooding, and impact are felt first at the household level. So I think it's very important for us to understand about that from the human being perspective. So Habitat Humanity evidence show that communities are the cornerstone of the resilience. Resilience requires more than infrastructure. It requires behavior change and also collective action. Therefore, policy and programs must both engage the people who understand local risks. So through habitat learnings, communities are not beneficiaries. They must be part of decision maker, leading in the planning and then implementation process. So resilient intervention not succeed when they are rooted in daily life experience. So when we are talking about community-led resilience and neighborhood development, we have to start from the people. So first of all, local community lead participatory settlement planning. So communities map their own risks, set their own priorities, and build local governance system. When people are involved in the beginning, the ownership for sure is growing. Plans stop being documented on the self by itself when we see so much about it, but become action plans that reflect real and daily risks that happen to them. The second part, community organized collective action. So through self-help housing and settlement upgrading, local communities work together. They mobilize resources, implement improvement, and manage neighborhood revitalization themselves. So technical partners like us play a role, but the work is driven by the local community. So trust is built and change is sustained. The third one, we call it solutions are co-created. We do not design for communities, but we design with them. Organizations like Habitat for Humanity, local governments that we have MOUs, and the technical expert, academia, and so forth come together with residents, with the local partners. The goal practically, locally grounded outcomes that actually works at the ground. So the fourth one, we enable participation through housing cooperative. This community-owned structure gives unbankable local communities access to affordable and appropriate financing. By pooling resources and accessing loan together, families can finance housing improvement and settlement upgrades that would otherwise be out of reach for any one household alone. In short, we have to plan together, act together, design together, finance together, because resilience is stronger when it is owned by the people who live in everyday. So I would like to provide the Tanjung Kait case study to show how the principle is working. So Tanjung Kait is a coastal community in Mauk, Tangerang district, just southwest of Jakarta. It homes for 110 low-income families who has been living in informal settlement on land plot privately owned by a temple of 3 generations that without any lands for more than 2 decades. The condition is severe. Nearly 90% of families live in inadequate housing. 90% has no access to clean water. There was no proper drainage system, and constant flooding left stagnant water in the alleys, creating serious health issues. So you can see on the slide that on the photos on the upper right, is over there, show the condition before any intervention. The background photos, the big one, showing that the same area, so after revitalization led by the community, with support from Habitat for Indonesia, with CSR donors, and also Tangerang local government and the transformation we can see. So how it works? It started with 4 approaches mentioned. The first one, participatory planning. So through habitat facilitated PASA method, for site planning, residents together map the land. For the land consolidation and plotting, flood points, government required public area, green open space, priorities, and set up a local committee, which is very important about the governance system. For the first time, they had a collective plan that they own. So the second one is collective action. Families organize self-help settlement, revitalization. They work together to build better drainage, improve pathway, waste management, and in-kind contribution for new houses construction. So technical partners support them, but the labors and leadership came from within the local community. The third is about co-creation. So Habitat for Humanity, the local government, and technical expert, we work together alongside with the home partners. Solutions were not imported. They were adapted to Tanjung Kai's coastal reality, budget, and their skills. And the fourth one, access to finance. I think this is very key important for them. Through local community structure, families pooled resources by facilitated formation of saving groups and access to affordable housing loans from cooperative for land acquisition because they cannot access to the bank. This made upgrades possible without waiting for external funding, and it became foundational towards local cooperative that they are now in formation, established for micro business and access for the government subsidies. So today, Tanjung Kai is more resilient and more secure through the settlement revitalization. Flooding is reduced, health conditions have improved, and more importantly, the community now has the confidence system and ownership to manage future risks themselves. And in fact, this now is being replicated to a few cities and also regency. So the learnings from here that we are seeing, that is, first, move beyond consultation to co-creation. Communities must partaking in and co-creation in decision-making, in design, implementation, and monitoring. The second part, treat community organization as social infrastructure. Strong, organized communities are resilient pillars, not just participants. The third one, we have to build the system for learning and adaptation. Scale does not come from copying the project itself. It comes from programs that listen, adapt, and respond to the local realities. So the reflection, if we embed this principle into housing policies, we build cities that are more resilient and more inclusive. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Andoko. I think it was really interesting to listen how the environmental resilience, that is a part that has been discussed a lot now when we talk about urban resilience in the previous presentations, relies a lot also on the social resilience of the communities that are actually the ultimate beneficiaries of all these actions. And of course, we talked now about regional collaboration, but it's nice to see how the collaboration between several partners, including the local authorities, the communities, and external and technical partners, can lead to this type of project. And as you mentioned at the end, how the learning and exchange can allow to scale up these initiatives. So I'm sure there will be some questions coming up afterward, but from a specific intervention as the one in Indonesia and the lesson from Habitat for Humanity, we move now to a really large project that has been active for a few years now in the Asia-Pacific region, also composed by a multiple set of actors and partners. So I will pass the word to you, Ms. Marlene, to go through the Urban Act example.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to speak here rather towards the end of the project, of the discussion. So let me start by introducing first a project, Urban Act, and there are many colleagues working in the Urban Act project in the room. So I hope that I represent the project and our lessons learned in a good way. So for those of you who don't know the Urban Act project yet, we work across 5 countries, China, India, Indonesia, Philippines and Thailand, and 16 pilot cities, secondary ones. We also have Combator among our pilot cities, that the commissioner is also here with us today. Our ambition is to help cities to not only to prepare climate plans, but support them in the transition from ambition to implementation. And we are a consortium of 5 organizations, including GIZ, ESCAP, UCLG ASPAC, and also 2 German universities, financed by the International Climate Initiative. So from our last years of implementation, I would like to share 3 lessons learned on how to enable urban resilience, and I think many of those actually align or echo what has already been said today, but I hope to give a little bit more of a perspective to it. So, the first lesson that we learned over the last years is that climate resilience is fundamentally also a governance challenge. I think that Sunny mentioned this quite prominently in the beginning, and it's very much that climate risk don't follow institutional boundaries. We do have floods, air quality issues, heat, etc., that affect transport, housing, water management, etc., and in a simultaneous way, while these responsibilities are often spread across many different agencies and levels of government. So what made a difference in the Urban Act project was that we were creating governance mechanisms that coordinated between different levels of governments, but also in a horizontal way across different sectors. And one successful example that I would like to give is our work in Thailand on comprehensive spatial planning, where we were able to bring different agencies together, including the Department of Public Works, the Meteorological Department, the Office of Transport, the Office for Environment, agencies which commonly don't have so much in contact, but which together really bring in different data, different instruments to enable urban resilience. And it's not easy, but it really shows that it's worth to be brave to break those silos and invest into robust government frameworks. The next one is on risk intelligence, and this is also one topic which has been quite prominent already today. And I think we live in a world which is increasingly abundant of data. But the important thing is maybe not that cities necessarily need more data, but that they need better decision tools. So that means that data is tailored in a way that it addresses the needs of cities, that cities are able to understand them, and also that you can integrate different data sets into decision support systems. I think we saw the Bangladesh Deer portal, which I found very interesting. We saw the existing work from ESCAP also on supporting cities and having a digital platform for climate risk maps. And one lesson learned that we have from the Urban Act project is also that capacity building at the municipal level to actually use this risk information, use this risk tools is very much needed. I would like to highlight a couple of success stories which we had in the Urban Act project. For instance, in Bacolod City in the Philippines, we were able to map different hazards, exposure, and vulnerability data and combine them into climate risk and social vulnerability overlaps, which is guiding now the resilience ambition of the city. In Thailand, we were able to build up a cooperation between the Meteorological Department and our pilot cities that really created more data, climate data tailored towards their needs. And then also in India, we were able to work on a climate budgeting tool, both with Coimbatore and another pilot city, showing that these digital tools are very much requested by the cities and can be put into practice. And finally, I would also like to highlight the aspect of adaptive implementation. So this wants to say that ultimately implementation is about the people and the institutions. I find that that the lessons learned from Safety Pin and Climate Qubit were very meaningful to add here, and I think this is also what we experienced on the ground. Technical solutions alone don't guarantee implementation. They need to reflect local priorities. They need to involve those that are most affected by climate risk, and also create ownership among institutions. At the same time, we always see that it is not so easy to implement socially inclusive agendas, that there is often also a data gap among gender and social disaggregated data, and that it can be also challenging to talk with people most at risk. The lessons learned here is that we focus rather on co-design than on consultations. And here I would like to highlight our work in India, especially in the pilot cities of Panji and also of Shimla, where we did JETSI studies with informal workers and with workers from the waste and road sector to see where the needs are and how to integrate these needs into the city plans. And also in Penang, we were able to co-develop the climate action plan with community representatives. And finally, I was asked to come up with some recommendation what we can take from this for scaling urban resilience. And I think on the government side, both at the local and international government, we would like to emphasize that it is worth to invest into participatory planning, that it's worth improving access for cities to integrated climate and vulnerability information, that it's important that these cities not always need to start again with creating risk map, but offering something from the national government which is more systematic, which makes cities to move beyond planning and implementation even a bit faster, and also that it's worth to break the silos. In terms of regional cooperation, we have experienced a lot of potential in city pairing and peer learning. In the Urban Act project, we also had UCLG ASPAC, which has very much supported with the city pairing, bringing together cities that have similar challenges across the Asia Pacific, and that this has been very meaningful, this direct exchange. Also, maybe even from our perspective, it's worth engaging into regional cooperation. I think that this regional perspective is always very meaningful, which has also been shown today by this exchange. Also very important that we start building up from what has been achieved by other organizations already in the region. There's no need to always start from the beginning again. And we've also seen in the Urban Act project that regional collaboration can help to mobilize resources for urban resilience. For instance, we have been working with the anti-growth triangle, which have joined forces for waste management together. And finally, for the ESCAP's regional urban resilience guidance, we would like to encourage you to focus on practical implementation pathways. We would like to see some context-specific approaches. We would like to see some packaged solution ideas there, and also in a language that is practical enough to speak to urban planners and to pilot cities so that they can actually put this guidance into practice. And then, yes, finally, over those years of project implementation across the 5 countries and pilot cities, I think our final lesson is that resilience is not built through plans, but that we need governance, knowledge, and partnerships that allow cities continuously learn, adapt, and act to become climate resilient. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Marlene. It's great to see how a regional program that tackles climate action and urban resilience end up working in so many different topics across the participating cities and across different areas, right, of the Asia-Pacific region. So on governance, as was highlighted earlier, as a key important element from the UNDP colleagues, on data, and then of course on people-centered approach and gender equality, disability, social inclusion aspects, all following under the same objectives and contributing to a more resilient space. I think that it's good to see how many partners that are also present here today were involved in this project. I think it can be a really good sign of how the collaboration that is being discussed also and that needs to be explored as a part of the objective of this EGM is actually working and is present here today physically. So we pass now to the last presentation. So looking again to the youth perspective, right? That was already touched earlier. So it's nice to see how this topic is mainstream across different elements of this session. So I will pass the word to you, Mr. Dang Dao, for your presentation. Thanks. Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks so much, ESCAP, for inviting me to the room and then creating space. My name is Dao. I'm originally from Vietnam, but I'm leading a regional youth network called Young Urbanists of Southeast Asia. So basically, we are a regional network covering Southeast Asia and also Asia Pacific as well. And apart from all of the regional efforts, we also have physical chapters operating in 4 countries in Southeast Asia: Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, and Singapore. So basically, we try to also cover locally grounded action as well. And then just want to start with the first one. I think that I start UC with other friends of mine with the hope and also with the belief that youth is always can be considered as the connectors for resilient cities. It is simply because I think all of us here, I think we can all agree that urban development is a very complicated field, and also, but at the same time, the fragmentation of collaboration is very, very visible as well, from like spatial to national fragmentation, where countries sometimes like it is very difficult to collaborate with each other, to sectoral silos as well, in which like public sector, private sector, and even civil society sometimes can really find common ground, and then always like compete for like competing priorities. And the last one is also intergenerational disconnection as well, because sometimes me as a young, not so young, but like still young person, with like all of the experts, like we don't really speak the same languages, and also we don't really understand the difficulties that each side of the table face as well. And then that's why we came up with this idea of a regional organization as well. And then in practice, I think all of us can agree that even though we have so many actors in urban development or resilient city building as well, for example, like NGOs, government, business, university, community, and United Nations, but sometimes it's pretty hard to connect with each other. And then the key point when I try to build this organization or regional youth network with other not only students, but also like young scholars or like young practitioners or like early career professional as well, is try to connect the dot. So because youth is not homogeneous, we are also like from different sectors and also a different country as well. And then what we have compared to like the seniors expert here is that we have time and also passion to actually connect the dot and then try to push things forward with our youthfulness, also with our passion as well. So I think that the key message for the first slide is that if resilient cities require integrated action, then young people should be treated and also should be seen as connectors across sectors, generations, cities, and community as well. But it comes with like another problem as well. This is my second slide, simply because as a founder of a regional organization, I think that I had been facing like several difficulties in terms of securing funding, but also like in terms of like capacity building as well. And then in light of CD9, I myself with like a few youth-led organizations as well have conducted a survey and also like within our network, but also outside our network as well, across Asia and the Pacific. And then actually one of the biggest barriers that young people believe that is hindered them from like actually like serving as a connectors of in urban development is actually like a capacity building. But I believe that like UC, I think UC is one of the very few youth-led organizations operate at the regional scale as well. And then throughout the past 3 years, we have been able to actually peer train ourselves. So actually not so much in terms of like depending on senior expert or like big organization, but we actually like work with each other and then actually like train ourselves. So we actually have like 500 trained leaders and members across Asia Pacific and also the world as well. And then so far we have been affecting nearly 10,000 local community, like try to like contribute to like the efforts, your effort of like, all of the organization here as well. And then I think that like the real issue or like the real thing to move forward from here is that we try to create spaces where young people can learn the language of urban development, connecting with expert and also organization, and also bring community perspective into regional conservation as well. But actually we cannot really do it alone. So that's why our final key message is that that I, on behalf of my organization, invite all of the expert organization or stakeholder here to actually join effort to create a practical strategy for scaling urban resilience where youth can play an important role in helping or supporting you guys in achieving a resilient city building. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dao. I think it's a great last intervention from our speakers with a really positive message forward. I think that the issues of these competitive priorities among different groups, right, emerged within government, within countries, within communities even, and now you're bringing these different aspects of really different groups that include the youth, and proposing the youth as a connector, I think is a great idea, especially considering that while the climate and resilience related issues are happening now and they are extremely urgent to address, they are a long-term issues that we will have to keep facing, and training, as you said, and involving and considering a key part of the game, the youth will ensure that in the years to come all the work done is actually leveraged, improved, and made more inclusive. So now we are finished with the presentations. I think in the interest of time, I'm told that there will be space for one questions on first come basis. We will give some space, and then of course this is to respect everyone's calendar and time this afternoon, but then afterwards outside the room or within the room when the session is finished, please, we invite you to continue the conversation with the speakers. So I will open the floor now for one question only. The first one that we will notice, we will give the opportunities, and the rest can be taken on a bilateral basis between yourself. Yes, please.
Hi, thank you. My name is Brad Arsenault, and I'm with the Sustainable Urban Development section here. Just a question for the panel writ large. If ESCAP could make one contribution to urban resilience over the next 5 years, where do you think it could have the greatest impact?
Thank you. This is for everyone. So contributing from your perspective, which is diverse and useful for that. So if more than one wants to answer, it would be great as well.
Yeah, maybe I start to break the ice and then I let the other two colleagues answer to this. So we've been working, of course, together with ESCAP the last years on urban resilience, and I think we saw a lot of amazing things that you've been doing. I think that one thing that could be useful to have is to actually show different governance frameworks, because I think that has been quite prominent in the discussion, and show how those could also be implemented. And I think it's been discussed a lot on the enabling the environment, also on multi-level climate action, and I think showcasing how this actually could be successfully implemented in practice across different contexts in the Asia Pacific would be highly beneficial. And I think in some aspects also to find the balance between being generic enough but yet context specific, so that urban planners and cities can actually use the knowledge presented.
Yes, I think it's a very strategic question, because in 2034 in Indonesia, more than 50 or 60% they are in urban sector. And then quite a number, I think it's more than 30%, they are the poor. Habitat for Indonesia, we cover the income brackets from decile 1 to 2, but for microfinancing or housing financing up to decile 5. But basically they are unbankable. They cannot access to the loan from the bank. So the decision that the government is always the easiest one is relocation. But the issues, relocation is not really preferable by the low-income families, because usually it's far with their incomes, source of incomes. This has become an issue. So two things that I think is very important. My reflection on what Tanjung Kait. We completed Tanjung Kait before we finished our climate resilient. We call it passive cooling. We already completed 4 pilot projects after this. My reflection is that if we combine between hazard resilience and the climate resilience, both resilience and also sustainability can come together. But it's really that beyond housing, it's not just about the concrete, but the homes where the family, that is the houses, is become the asset. Because with Habitat, we make sure that 15 years they will not sell their houses, but it should be combined with the income generations based on the houses, and also on other kind of design, which is that based on that they improve the health, they improve the education, and also part of that is income generations. So it should be a holistic point of view about how we see about housing intervention for the poor in the urban sector.
All right. I think for me, yesterday, I think I saw a part of ESCAP report on sustainable urban development. And one of the main problems that we have right now is actually lack of coordination. But I think on top of coordination, also the problem of institutionalization or standardization as well, because not all organizations in the region or in the world have the same power as ESCAP to invite people or invite organizational stakeholders from different sectors as well to come to one place and then discuss and then find solution for each other as well. But sometimes these practices don't really translate in national or local practices as well, where, for example, young people or people from marginalized community don't really have voices or access to the room decision-making process as well. So I hope that maybe in the next 5 years or 10 years that ESCAP can also create maybe a set of criteria or a set of lists to kind of standardize the way that we try to move towards a more holistic and comprehensive approach where different stakeholders and actors can join efforts to create a more sustainable urban development futures for all.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the question. It gave space for all the speakers to respond. So for ESCAP, the recommendation include focusing on governance frameworks that can facilitate climate action and resilience at the national, subnational level, but of course possibly also on the regional scale. There are interesting groups, practice, and association of member states that can also support the attention, of course, to the most vulnerable group and low-income families that still compose a large and consistent part of the societies in the Asia-Pacific cities, and of course the institutionalizations of stronger inclusive mechanism for the co-creation of any aspects. I think in the slides from the colleague of Habitat for Humanity, there was from consultation to co-creation, right, as a wording to summarize a bit this concept. With this, we close this session. Thank you very much again for the attention, for remaining until the last bits. There are only the closing remarks pending. So to close this panel, I invite you to share a round of applause for our speakers. And I'll pass it back to Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ricardo. We will now move on to the closing session. I would like to invite Her Excellency Ms. Geeta Chowdhury, Minister of Agriculture, Forest and Environment of Nepal, along with Her Excellency Ms. Wijayanti Idrisinghe, Ambassador of Sri Lanka and Permanent Representative to ESCAP. I also invite Ms. Kawaguchi Ruriko, Director for Global Initiatives Division, Policy Administration and International Affairs Bureau, City of Yokohama, along with Mr. Kurt Garrigan, Chief of Sustainable Urban Development Section. Your Excellency, Ms. Geeta Chowdhury, you have the floor.
Thank you. Distinguished Chair, Excellencies, distinguished Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the organizing team for providing this valuable opportunity. It is an honor to address this expert group meeting on strengthening resilient and sustainable urban development in Asia and the Pacific. In the present context, we cannot deny that urbanization is the essential for the development of Asia-Pacific region, and the question that arises here is how to make that urbanization a more inclusive, resilient, healthy, livable, and sustainable. I believe this event has successfully demonstrated that resilient urban development is achieved when national strategies and regional cooperation frameworks are aligned to empower, finance, and protect vulnerable local communities. From the various presentation and the thought-provoking discussion, I deeply learned about the multidimensional impacts of rapid urbanization and its challenges related to the environmental and ecological degradation, non-inclusive development, and biodiversity loss, pollution, and the over-exploitation of natural resources, including land, water, and the public space. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Nepal has undergone rapid urbanization in recent years, with about 25% of population living in urban areas and over 60% residing in municipalities. This trend has been accompanied by increased migration and the rapid growth of the informal and squatter settlements. Rapid urban growth has increased pressure on natural resources, green space, and environmental quality, leading to the challenges such as water scarcity during dry seasons, deteriorating air quality, urban flooding, and water logging. In recent years, the frequency of floods, landslides, droughts, epidemics, and heat waves, cold waves, poor air quality, pollutions, and waste has impacted impacted the livelihood of local people, particularly children, women, elderly with the chronic health problems, and disadvantaged communities. To address these issues, the government of Nepal has adopted the National Urban Development Strategy 2017, a 15 years roadmap aimed at promoting balanced regional development, expanding economic opportunities, strengthening green and resilient infrastructure, and fostering climate resilient and inclusive cities. In practice, we have been adopting and implementing the low emission technologies and adaptation actions, promoting electrical vehicles, greenery, and the roadside plantation, creating and promoting and protecting urban wetlands, urban forestry as a strategy for resilient and sustainable cities. Likewise, Nepal has given emphasis to replace fossil fuels gas stoves by electric ones. Furthermore, by adopting the green, resilient, and inclusive development approach, Nepal has structurally bound to implement environmental sustainability, social inclusion, and economic growth measures. In a nutshell, it is vital to integrate the disaster risk reduction action, green belts, water source protection measures, ecosystem-based adaptation, building codes into the fabric of urban settlements. To scale up these efforts, we must bridge the gaps in the access to finance, climate resilient tools, and the technology, community engagement, and the collaboration and coordination among local, national, regional, and global agencies is required. Excellencies, with this, let us not leave these ideas behind this room. Let us carry this momentum back to our respective countries to turn these dialogues into the action. Thank you. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Now we hear from Her Excellency, Ms. Mijayanti Edrisinghe. You have the floor.
Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to deliver this closing remark at the conclusion of this important expert group meeting on strengthening resilience and sustainable urban development in Asia and the Pacific. At the outset, I wish to express my sincere appreciation to ESCAP for convening this timely and valuable platform, which has brought together member states, city representatives, experts, development partners, and stakeholders to deliberate on one of the most pressing challenges facing our region today, building cities that are resilient, inclusive, and sustainable. The discussions held today have clearly demonstrated that urban resilience is no longer a choice. It is an essential requirement for sustainable development. Across Asia and the Pacific, cities are experiencing multiple and interconnected challenges, including climate-related risks, extreme weather events, environmental degradations, infrastructure pressures, and social vulnerabilities. These challenges do not occur in isolation. Rather, they interacted and compound one and another, affecting communities, economics, and the long-term development prospect of our societies. Today's discussions have reinforced an important message addressing these complex challenges required moving more fragmented and reactive approaches towards integrated risk-informed urban planning and governance. Resilience must be embedded into our development discussions, from urban planning and infrastructure investment to environmental management, climate adaptations, disaster risk reductions, and community engagement. I am encouraged by the rich exchange of experiences and practical approaches shared by participants during this meeting. The discussions have highlighted the importance of strengthening institutional coordinations, improving urban risk information and data system, promoting nature-based and system-based solutions, and mobilizing innovation, financial, and support resilient urban development. As we conclude today's deliberations, I would like to highlight several important outcomes emerging from this expert group meeting. First, the meeting has contributed to a stronger shared understanding among member states and experts on the priority urban resilience risk affecting cities across area and the Pacific, while recognizing the delivery of national and local context. Second, the exchange of experiences has helped identify regional need and gap, particularly related to capacity building, knowledge sharing, policy guidance, and cooperation mechanisms that can support national and local effort to strengthening urban resilience. Third, the discussions have provided valuable inputs towards the development of practical regional urban resilience guidance and future cooperation initiative under ESCAP's mandate. These efforts will be important in supporting countries and cities to translate resilient principles into effective policies and actions on the ground. Fourth, today's meeting has further strengthening regional networks and peer learning among governments, cities, technical institutions, and development partners. Continued collaboration will be essential to ensure that successful practices can be shared, adapted, and scaled across the region. Excellencies, distinguished participants, for countries like Sri Lanka, which continue to address these impacts of climate change, environmental pressures, and increasing demand on urban systems, the importance of resilience and sustainable urban development is particularly significant. Strengthening resilience required not only infrastructure solutions but also including governance, community participations, sustainable planning, and partnership across all levels of society. This meeting has once again demonstrated the value of the regional platform such as ESCAP, where countries can come together to share experiences, identify common solutions, and strengthening collective actions. No city or country can address these challenges alone. Regional cooperation, knowledge sharing, exchange, and partnership will remain critical to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly Sustainable Development Goal 11 on sustainable cities and communities. As we move forward, I hope the outcome of today's discussions will continue to guide our shared effort and building cities that are better prepared for future risks, more inclusive for all communities, and capable for supporting sustainable economic and social development. Finally, I wish to convey my sincere appreciations to ESCAP, the Sustainable Urban Development sections, moderators, speakers, experts, and all participants for their valuable contributions and constructive engagement throughout this meeting. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I now welcome Ms. Kawaguchi Ruriko from the city of Yokohama.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ruriko Kawaguchi from the city of Yokohama. First of all, I'd like to sincerely thank ESCAP for giving me the opportunity to deliver the closing remarks for this important meeting. I'd also like to express my appreciation to all the experts and participants for your valuable contributions and discussions. Today's sessions reminded me once again how important resilient and sustainable urban development is for the Asia-Pacific region. As climate change accelerates and the rapid urbanization continues, cities are facing increasingly complex and interconnected challenges. It was inspiring to hear your insights on holistic approaches to addressing these issues. I was especially struck by the discussions on risk-informed urban planning, governance, and the importance of regional cooperation and knowledge sharing. Looking ahead, in the summer of 2027, the City of Yokohama will co-host the 9th Asia Pacific Urban Forum, or APUF 9, together with ESCAP. APUF is one of the largest conferences in the region and provides an important platform to discuss the future of sustainable cities. At APUF 9, climate change and urban resilience will be key thematic areas, and we hope the ideas shared today will contribute to those discussions. In addition, in 2027, Yokohama will host Green Expo, an international exhibition focused on the environmental sustainability. It will showcase a vision of a future society in harmony with nature. We would be delighted to welcome all of you to Yokohama next year for both APUF 9 and Green Expo. Finally, I sincerely hope that today's meeting will lead to further collaboration and concrete actions towards building more resilient and sustainable cities across the Asia-Pacific region. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ruriko-san. I will now give the floor lastly to Mr. Kurt Kerrigan.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And it's encouraging again to be in a second session where there's gender appropriate representation. So thank you very much. So thanks to all of our speakers and moderators today, especially Her Excellency Minister Chowdhury, Her Excellency Ambassador, and our partner Ruriko-san from Yokohama. And thank you to all participants for staying with us this afternoon. You know, as mentioned early on in this session, we have only a few more years to achieve the SDGs and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. But I think it was evident today that urban resilience, however, has a much longer horizon. And building the resilience of communities is never immediate. It's not going to be immediate. So we must recognize that today's risks may look very different than those we face in the future. We heard today that risks are compounding and cascading, and responses may be inherently complex and multidimensional. And this evolving nature of risk means that there must be continuous improvement, and there must be systemic and integrated solutions. Shocks and disruptions are unpredictable. That's why we call them shocks. And the contexts we know are different, and there is not a single solution, but there are key opportunities for sharing successes, common challenges, and a key role for regional cooperation. We know that communities must have the capacity to respond and adapt. And that's why we say communities, not just governments, because governments are not the only responder to facilitate resilience. Citizens, civil society, aid agencies, and many others each have roles. And again, it's not just environment or climate resilience that needs to be addressed, but economic resilience, social preparedness, and social inclusion all contribute to resilience. And those lead to mechanisms that are fundamentally grounded in governance. Building resilience is not project-based, it's institutional. And we must recognize that resilience must be inclusive and ensure that all risks and all vulnerabilities are considered. So that means all stakeholders need to be included. But resilience initiatives are also some of the key opportunities to identify intersections between formality and informality. How we think of resilience is important. You know, if you think about some of the disruptions, whether it be earthquakes, floods, what have you, often the informal sector is able to respond much more effectively because they have more limited reliance on sophisticated systems, whether they be transportation, grids, refrigeration. And so when there are disruptions, while the economic impacts may be disproportionately shared by the informal sector, the ability to respond and adapt may actually be stronger. So it's not always learning from the formal to informal, but seeing where there are lessons in the opposite directions as well. So today's discussion, I think, is really a start. It's not, there's no conclusion here, I don't think, but it's encouraging to see everyone engaged in this discussion, recognizing that communities and resilience are fundamental to the future of this region in particular. And how we build that resilience and how we define it and the actions that we take to support it are all significantly important. And again, I just want to thank all of the participants in the room for your contributions today. I think we've heard a lot of solutions, ideas, and many challenges. But I think we all also heard the opportunity and the willingness to come together and build more resilient and sustainable communities. So thank you all very, very much. And I will turn it back to Rebecca.
Thank you very much, Kurt. I think we can now officially end our session, and we look forward to seeing everyone at APUF. Lastly, if you have the chance, please do fill out the survey so we can improve our work. Before that, also, we want to invite everyone to please rise for a group photo. And Excellency Ambassadors, please join us in the group photo.
Please come join us, everyone.
Everyone, please come.
Everyone. Speakers and participants, please join
The cameraman can give us instructions. This one, there to say.
Sorry, wait.
Here's a final one.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Did have a